The main character sees two girls in front of him who smile at him. He doesn't understand how he could get into the body of a 10-year-old, being a 32-year-old virgin. One of the girls touches his cheek with her finger, and the other gently strokes his head. He thinks that he is really lucky now and asks himself what kind of mysterious skill he got in this world. He makes the assumption that this is the magic of cooking seasoning. One girl is still stroking his head with a smile on her face, and the other continues to poke her finger in his face. The main character blushes and shivers, but he definitely likes it. A few days ago. The boy barely opens first one eye and then the other. He's lying in a clearing somewhere and muttering about how he needs to be preserved. Suddenly he jumps up and exclaims in surprise. The main character does not understand where he is. He remembers that he worked overtime yesterday and then took the subway home late at night, had dinner as usual, went to bed for a swim. Memories of the past and his routine life flash before his eyes. Suddenly, he notices changes in his body. The main character looks at his hands and then his feet in disbelief, even touching and lifting them, and then hesitantly touches his face with his hands, asking questions. The guy is surprised by his appearance and does not understand what is happening. The main character notices his small body and thinks to himself that he is 32 years old. He is surprised that he has become a child, and he also has other clothes. The boy realizes, in disbelief, that it is too real to be a dream, and he does not understand what is happening. Suddenly, an idea flashes through his head, and he puts his hand forward, intending to invoke the status. A sign appears in front of him, stating that his name is Tatsuya. He is 10 years old, his race is a high elf, and his condition is stable. He is very surprised and cannot believe that he is really in another world. He thinks to himself that he got into a game transfer. Back in his previous life, he was often fascinated by fantasy novels, always dreaming of getting into one of them. Memories of a lot of books I've read flash through my head. The main character realizes that this cannot be reality and suddenly notices something else in the status. Tatsuya pays attention to his age of 10 and is surprised that he has become a high elf. Next, he notices that he is of the first level. The main character is terrified and thinks that he needs to stop and think. Then he realizes that he is weak. He thinks to himself that he has reincarnated from a 32-year-old into a 10-year-old, and even into an elf. He touches his ears and says that according to the books, elves have pointed ears, but his ears remain the same. The main character does not understand why this happened. He has the first level, and his strength is still 0, so now he is defenseless. He remembers to himself that this is how it usually started in books and games. Tatsuya realizes that reality has turned out to be much harsher. He is also concerned about this line about vulnerability. The main character wonders what this means and then realizes that he is a magician. Suddenly, Tatsuya notices a system window that informs him that a vulnerable magician is a title assigned to a person who has not had any intimate relations for more than 30 years. He is greatly surprised by this and exclaims loudly, if he has not entered into an intimate relationship in 30 years, he automatically becomes a magician. He had heard that somewhere before. He understands that for all 30 years of his life, he was going to eventually become an elf magician. Although his body had become younger, his mind remained the same. Tatsuya finds this ironic and cries with happiness. He starts wiping his tears with his hand and says that it seems tears have flowed from his eyes. Suddenly, he notices something else. He is attracted to a special skill in the system window. It says that his special skill is cooking seasoning. He wonders what it is. The system explains to him that his skill is that he can cook absolutely any seasoning. She talks about additional skills and improving her seasonings. Now only soy sauce and sugar are available to him at level 1. The main character is surprised because he does not understand what the skill of creating seasoning means. In his previous life, he loved to cook. Memories of the dishes he cooked appear in his head. He makes the assumption that this is why it has now become his special skill. Tatsuya realizes that now his magic lies in the preparation of special spices that will have to be prepared. He urges himself to try and stick his hand out, shouting about soy sauce. Suddenly, soy sauce starts pouring out of his hand. The main character is happy that he succeeded. The jet hits the tree, hitting exactly the target, and the boy, with uncertainty in his voice, orders the magic to stop. He is glad that magic has stopped and wonders how much of this magic is in him. Tatsuya notices to himself that the whole tree is soaked in soy sauce. There's still soy sauce in his hand, and it's dripping down, and it's dripping down. Tatsuya says it stopped. The main character is surprised to note that this skill is perfect for housewives who like to cook and add seasonings to all sorts of dishes. The soy sauce is still dripping on the ground. The main character still does not understand how this skill will help him in battle. He is confused and at a loss, but reassures himself that he knows how to cook soy sauce and laughs ironically at this. The guy says with annoyance and disappointment that now he will have to live quietly and peacefully, avoiding conflicts as he has lived these 30 years. Suddenly, he notices something behind him and turns around. Tatsuya sees a very evil wolf in front of him. The monster looks at him menacingly. The main character exclaims, realizing that it is a wolf, and makes the assumption that he smelled it. The guy realizes that he needs to run, but the wolf will catch up with him even if he starts running very fast. Tatsuya thinks that even though his skill is unsuitable for battle, he should at least try to scare off the wolf with this seasoning. The animal growls at him. The main character realizes with fright and confusion that he has no other choice and needs to summon a waterfall of soy sauce. He prepares to attack and puts his hand forward, attacking the wolf with soy sauce. However, the wolf jumps, dodging the soy sauce. The main character is surprised that he retreats. The wolf approaches the liquid and sniffs at it with incomprehension and then looks at it with disgust. The animal bypasses the soy sauce, not wanting to get closer. The main character wonders to himself why he reacts so much to soy sauce. He makes the assumption that the wolf's receptors are dulled because of its smell. At the same moment, he stops and thinks for a second that soy sauce has such a strong smell. He realizes that there is a possibility that he can attract other monsters living in the forest. The wolf growls at him menacingly, and the main character thinks to himself that if more wolves come here, then he will definitely come to an end. The main character thinks to himself that he will have to attack the wolf again, otherwise he will attack. He prepares to let the soy sauce out of his hand again, thinking to himself that he needs to aim well to get right in the face. The wolf quickly runs at him with a furious roar and jumps. Tatsuya understands that this is his chance and should not be missed. He holds out his hand and calls for soy sauce. The main character gets right into the wolf, which flies at him and is happy about it. From the great pressure of soy sauce, the wolf is pinned to a tree by a jet, and he falls unconscious to the ground, opening his mouth and sticking his tongue out of his mouth. The boy slowly approaches him and, looking at the head of the defeated enemy, notes with surprise and joy that everything ended well. The main character was able to defeat him with soy sauce. Tatsuya realizes that he needs to get out of here before the other monsters come and talks about it out loud. However, he stops abruptly and says it's still amazing. The boy opens the system window in front of him with a wave of his right hand and looks at it. He notices with surprise in his eyes and open mouth such a skill as storing things, and now understands what storage means, which he has already seen before. The main character puts his hand in front of him, intending to use his storage skill and move the wolf to a storage location. The animal disappears, and instead a white sphere appears into a circle that flies the same white ring. To the boy's surprise, she hovers above the ground. This white sphere and the ring of the same color around it also disappear. Tatsuya saw that a wolf icon had appeared in the storage area in one of the cells. He says that everything is clear to him. He can transform any things and store them at home and vice versa. Tatsuya puts his right hand forward and, trying to concentrate, mentally calls for the wolf to appear in front of him. Suddenly, a wolf appears in front of him in the air. The main character admires and exclaims in surprise. Tatsuya notices with a smile on his face that he is just a wizard, and that's great. But suddenly, he stops smiling and thinks. He thinks to himself that he really did it. Tatsuya destroyed the beast with the sauce. The hero covers his nose with his palm and thinks that the salty smell is still in the air. He hopes that it will all be washed away by the rain. The main character walks slowly along a path in the middle of the forest, among many trees and various bushes. He comes out from behind a bush and opens his eyes in surprise, exhaling noisily. The boy sees a slightly crooked road in front of him, which goes far into the distance of the horizon, and loudly exclaims in surprise about it. The main character looks into the distance and makes the assumption that there is a city in that direction. He says that he needs to find a job to earn a bed for himself, so he will have to stay in the city for a while, but he thinks that this is not very critical, since he believes that no one will pay attention to the little kid. Suddenly, he stops abruptly and exclaims in surprise. The main character laughs shyly and says that he thinks about working even here. Nothing changes, even in another world. He continues on his way forward. After a while, he sees in front of him a large gate that leads to the city. The boy is confronted by a large, round-shaped founding city of Flesia. The main character approaches one of the guards and greets him with uncertainty. The man is surprised to ask what he wants. Tatsuya explains to him that he came here from a village to find a job. The man who guards the city near the gate, with a smile on his face, asks the boy how old he is. The main character is surprised and quickly replies that he is 30 years old. However, the man laughs, clearly not believing him, and he corrects himself, saying that he is 10. He is a little embarrassed and holds out his hands in a conciliatory gesture. Tatsuya silently berates himself, since he almost said his real age, and berates himself. The man explains that in this case, he needs to first register with the Adventurers Guild before looking for a job. There are many different crafts in Flesia, and he thinks that the guild will find him a good job that he can handle. The knight shows him where to go and tells him that the guild is located in the center of the city. The gate guard advises him to follow the road he showed him. The boy sincerely thanks him and goes ahead. The main character walks along the street of the city of Flesia, where there are many different people. He looks around, looks at the townspeople, and notices that this city is quite crowded. Tatsuya notices that the human race looks very different here. They are larger, and their eyes are set slightly lower than his. Even the children seem taller and bigger than him. He sees the sign and realizes that it says that a store is located in this room, thanks to special skills, because of which he understands everything they say and can read in all the languages that are used here. The boy does not see anyone who looks like an elf and makes the assumption that the race of high elves is quite rare, but immediately thinks that in this city they may be belittled or they do not exist at all. He thinks he needs to not show that he is an elf. Finally, the main character sees a large guild building in front of him and, with a smile on his face, exclaims with surprise and admiration that this is the Adventurers Guild. The main character enters the building of the Adventure Guild and hesitantly says that first of all he needs to register. He sees two signs in front of him, attached to a stand with ads. One of them says about the reception, and the second one says about registration. Tatsuya finds himself in the registration hall, where new adventurers are being registered. There are a lot of people in the room. He sees 3 girls with smiles on their faces sitting at the reception desk. The first girl tells the client that the request has been completed, and here is a list of monsters that must be destroyed. The second says that these plants can only be harvested in the fields from the west gate. The third one smiles sweetly. When the main character hesitantly approaches the reception desk and mumbles, afraid to say something, the third girl notices him and turns her head in his direction. She smiles sweetly and blushes a little, asking what happened to him and if he was lost. The girl is so cute that Tatsuya feels as if light is coming from her, filling the whole room. He is surprised by her beauty and covers his head with both hands, trying to hide from the sweetness of the girl. In his mind, he compares her to an angel. The girl does not understand the reason for his behavior, but still continues to smile very sweetly, closing her eyes. Tatsuya reminds himself in his head that he must not be distracted. Blushing a little, he leans against the registration desk and says that he came here to register as an adventurer. The girl exclaims in surprise. The worker of the Adventurers Guild is at first stunned into silence, speechless, but then, clearing her throat, gathers her thoughts, preparing to talk to the child. She says, confused but with a smile on her face, that this is the reception desk, and she just thought that such a cute child would hardly come here to look for work. The girl notices her mistake and asks for his name. The main character thinks to himself that she is very pretty and blushes a little from her thoughts. The main character introduces himself as Tatsuya, smiling sweetly at her. She smiles too and introduces herself as Lyn Bell, the guild administrator. Lyn picks up the documents and says, "It's nice to meet you." He reciprocates her words. The guy notices to himself that his one task is to get along with her. The girl puts a piece of paper on the table in front of him that she had previously picked up and asks him to fill out an application form. The boy sincerely thanks her. Lyn takes the form in his hands, saying that they should start registering, and picks up a piece of paper. She is surprised to ask if he has the skill of storing things. Tatsuya responds positively, but says he doesn't know exactly how to use it yet. He asks if storing things is a special skill. She says it's a very rare skill, as it can store a lot of things. Lyn Bell seals his card and regretfully says that since he has this skill, his magic level will be weaker than others. The girl asks him not to get upset so much. The boy arrives at a loss. The main character thinks about himself that, for now, he should keep silent about his magical abilities and not tell anyone anything. The guy doesn't say anything out loud and agrees with her. The girl gives him a card and says that it is his personal guild card. Lyn Bell explains to him that the rank of the guild varies from F to S, and he will become a real seeker when he reaches the rank of C. The main character says that he understood her and sincerely thanks her. He asks if he can start his work now. Lyn Bell responds positively and says she thought about sending him to destroy the goblins. The girl believes that this request is frequent, so he does not have to get to work right away. She, being at a loss, asks the main character what he thinks. The boy agrees with her and asks her to give him this request. Lyn says it's great and sincerely wishes him luck, and also asks him to remember that goblins live at the North Gate. Suddenly, the girl holds out her hand to him and sticks out her little finger. The main character does not understand what she wants. Lyn strictly tells him to be careful, as there are wolves and other more dangerous monsters there. Because of this, she urges him not to linger and return as soon as possible. She insists that he promise her this. The main character looks at her hand and finally understands what she wants. He is very surprised, blushing with great embarrassment, and exclaims loudly. He also holds out his little finger to her and wonders about it. Tatsuya also shakes her little finger with a shaking finger and makes a promise. The main character is very confused since he first touched his fingers with a girl. After a while, the main character finds himself outside the big city, in the western field, where goblins live. The boy still continues to look at his little finger. He is still red and happy because of the contact with the girl. He thinks about his new friend, Lyn Bell, who tells him with a smile on her face that if he has this skill, then the level of magic will be weaker than others. The guy thinks that Lyn Bell mentioned it back then. It turns out that he will not be able to become a strong warrior in the future, and will be able to master only 2 skills, storing things and creating various seasonings. The main character walks along the path, and at the same time wonders who he is and makes the assumption that he is a cook with excellent storage skills. He's sad and sarcastically says it's great and he can't say anything else. Tatsuya puts his fingers to his chin and thinks about it, realizing that this skill is not really where you can show off. Suddenly, he hears an extraneous sound. Next to him, near the lying bushes, there are 2 small goblins who are armed with clubs. Tatsuya realizes that they are goblins. The monsters look at him with anger. 2 monsters quickly run at him, with a desire to attack with their clubs. The main character is surprised, but reacts to the attack. He thinks to himself that even though his skills are limited, he can become an adventurer. Tatsuya, with determination in his eyes, puts his right hand forward, preparing to attack 2 goblins, and shouts about the magic of soy sauce, directing a stream of soy sauce at the opponents. He thinks to himself that he will master the skill anyway and defeat everyone. The monsters growl loudly, very surprised when the main character releases a stream of soy sauce on them. The goblins try to cover themselves with their hands, while not letting go of the clubs from their hands, but they can't do anything and the sauce gets into their mouths. The monsters start crying and try to spit it out. Tatsuya does not leave and continues to attack enemies that are no longer even visible due to the flow of soy sauce. The main character thinks about himself that he brought down a wave of soy sauce on them. Now he has to shoot an arrow out of soy sauce. Tatsuya makes an attack. He puts the middle and index fingers of his left hand together and holding them with his right hand attacks them, hitting one of the goblins, throwing him back. After a while, Tatsuya exhales wearily and looks at the system window, where the storage space for the main character's belongings is displayed. He sees that he has 10 goblins in his inventory. It minimizes the system window. He extends his right hand forward, activating the storage skill, and the body of one of the goblins turns into a white flying sphere, around which there is a similar white ring. Tatsuya is happy that he was able to defeat all 10 goblins. Dusk is coming. The main character looks at the sky and notices that the sun is already setting and he needs to go back to the guild. After all, he had promised Lyn Bell he would be back before sunset. The boy blushes a little and looks at his little finger again, remembering his little finger oath with the girl. Suddenly, he notices something nearby and opens his eyes in surprise. Tatsuya opens his mouth in surprise and squats on pure reflexes, thereby avoiding the attack of the wolf, which tried to harm him by jumping on him. The main character slides along the ground, helping himself with his hand so as not to fall. Tatsuya realizes with horror in his eyes that it is a wolf. The animal also successfully lands on all 4 paws, and they both look at each other with hostility. The guy puts his hand forward, preparing to attack, and shoots an arrow from soy sauce. But his attack does not hit the enemy, and the wolf successfully dodges, leaving the line of attack by jumping up. The monster looks at the soy sauce in surprise and opens its mouth in amazement. Tatsuya, who still has not managed to withdraw his hand after the attack, is discouraged by the fact that the wolf was able to dodge it. He realizes with horror that he is about to attack him. The main character puts the index and middle fingers of his left hand together, holding his hand with his right hand, and is about to attack him with soy sauce. The boy hesitantly attacks the wolf while he is jumping, trying to get him and injure him with an arrow made of soy sauce. This time, his attack hits right on target. Tatsuya is surprised at how strong his attack was and sees his enemy's defeated body falling to the ground on the ground. He doesn't understand what just happened. The main character is surprised to notice that he was able to increase the power. Tatsuya wonders if this is possible and assumes that it's just an accident. He looks at his right hand in surprise. Suddenly, a system window appears in front of him. Tatsuya opens his eyes in amazement at his appearance and looks at him in surprise, starting to read new messages. He sees that the level has been raised and new seasonings have been discovered. The skill of cooking seasonings has moved from level 1 to level 2. He has discovered a new skill, pastry seasonings level 2, and can create seasonings such as chocolate and eggs. This is strange. However, the main character remembers that chocolate is used in seasonings, so he thinks that this is also a good skill, especially since at least something edible has now appeared in his arsenal. Tatsuya is happy with the new skills he has acquired. He doesn't think for long at first, and then he grunts and remembers that he needs to archive the wolf. The guy puts his right hand forward, and instead of the body of the defeated enemy, a white sphere appears, which hovers above the ground. He puts the wolf away in a storage place. Tatsuya draws attention to the fact that the sun has already set below the horizon, and there is almost no light left. He anxiously says that he needs to hurry to the guild as he promised Lyn Bell to come by a certain time, before sunset. After a while, the main character gets to the building of the Adventure Guild, where an angry Lyn Bell is already waiting for him. She scolds the main character with severity in her voice and says that he was late. Tatsuya apologizes to her, saying that he didn't keep track of the time. He holds out his hands in a conciliatory gesture and blushes. He thinks to himself that the girl leaned very close to him. The boy even thinks that he's going to go crazy. The girl is still outraged and sternly says that it is dangerous for him to return alone in such darkness. She encourages the main character to come back before sunset next time. Lyn leans close to him and forcefully asks if he agrees with her. Tatsuya is confused and responds positively. He blushes a little and thinks to himself that she is very close and very beautiful, which is why he is about to die of happiness. The other girls at the counter are silent and do not interfere, but they watch in disbelief. Lyn asks if there were many goblins. He said it was too much. She asks if this is true and asks you to remember that monsters need to be destroyed immediately. Lyn Bell quickly grabs his hand and urges him to follow her. The main character is surprised by this and exclaims in amazement, even at first not understanding what she wants. The girl says that she hopes that he is not in a hurry and leads him with a quick step. The main character blushes very much when he notices that the girl is holding his hand. He is surprised, but obediently follows the girl, not daring to contradict her. He thinks to himself that he has finally hit a really big jackpot in this world. Lyn Bell leads him to the backyard of the Adventurers Guild building, where there are many people, but she goes in a specific direction towards one man. She does not let go of the still red protagonist's hand and loudly addresses some man as Volga. He turns around with surprise in his eyes and looks at her, leaving his business. The man is surprised that the girl came to him and asks her, adjusting her headdress with her right hand, what happened. Lyn Bell folds her hands in a pleading gesture and closes her eyes, saying that she brought someone to him. Volga says that since Bell herself came to him, he has no right to refuse. The man asks who this boy is and makes the assumption that he is another adventurer. The main character says that his name is Tatsuya. Lyn Bell exhales softly in relief. The man puts his right hand off his headdress and says that his name is Volga, and he is very pleased to meet him. He also says that he is responsible for the monsters here. Volga is annoyed to notice that the main character came empty-handed and makes the assumption that he has not hunted yet. Tatsuya quickly remembers his prey and asks to wait 1 minute. After a short amount of time, he takes out the bodies of the dead and, putting them on the table, shows them to his new friends. He says that's all he has. Volga and Lyn are very much amazed, and, looking at the bodies of the defeated, they are very surprised. The man says he has now realized that he can store items and is also surprised by the presence of a wolf. Suddenly, Volga examines the boy's prey more closely and notices the liquid on the bodies. He asks the boy what kind of odorous liquid it is, in which all the monsters are stained. Tatsuya says with uncertainty in his voice that he just decided to experiment a little. He thinks to himself that it was necessary to wash them of soy sauce before placing the goblins he killed in his house. He berates himself for forgetting about it and calls himself a fool. Volga says that they need to be thoroughly washed with water. He bends down a little and takes a watering can from the bottom shelf of the table on which the bodies of the monsters defeated by the boy lie. The man presses on the magic stone, and water begins to pour out of the watering can, even if there is no water in the watering can. The main character looks at the jet of water and is amazed at this. He cannot believe that the power of magic stones is so strong that they can produce water. Tatsuya thinks this world is really amazing, and watches as Volga takes one of the wolves by the tail and washes the bodies. After a while, the man, having finished butchering the monsters defeated by the boy, says that he collects stones and fur. There are ready-made but not tied bags of products that can be sold nearby. Tatsuya asks what he does with the monsters after extracting the stones and points to the closed bags nearby, making the assumption that it is meat. Volga says that he throws out the carcasses because they no longer need them. The boy is perplexed by this but says he understands. Lyn Bell, with a smile on her face, thanks the man for removing the stones and showing the newcomer the work. Volga kindly asks her to contact him again. The girl, still smiling, urges the main character to go back to the guild building with her. After a short amount of time, Lyn Bell and Tatsuya walk back holding hands as well. The main character thinks about himself that Lyn Bell was very angry when he returned late from a mission, and still does not believe that she is worried about him. He realizes with a smile on his face that she was thinking about him. These thoughts bring a blush to his face. Suddenly, the girl addresses him by name with severity in her voice. The girl says without turning around that she wants to ask him something. The main character is very much afraid of such sharp, by no means positive changes in the girl's voice. Lyn Bell is smiling, but her aura indicates that she is angry. She says with a threat in her voice that even though she warned him that it was dangerous there, he managed to destroy 2 wolves. He is surprised that she is in a real rage. The main character is standing near the registration desk, and Lyn Bell is sitting behind it. This is his first award for the work he has done, and he is very happy about it. The girl carefully puts a bag of money in front of him and says that there are 8 silver coins in this bag, and also that this is his reward for his work. The main character is very happy and sincerely thanks her with a smile on his face. The girl calmly says that there is nothing to thank her for. However, immediately, the intonation of her voice changes, and she threateningly urges him not to be too proud. She folds her brushes into a lock, placing them in front of her, and with a terrifying smile on her face asks him if he understood her. The guy gets very scared and responds positively. After that, Lyn Bell lectured him for another 30 minutes and explained that it was impossible to return late. He should not upset the girl, so he will do everything to prevent this from happening again. After Lyn finally calms down, the main character suddenly remembers something and turns to the girl with fear in his eyes and says that he wanted to ask her something. She looks at him in surprise. Tatsuya is a little shy, touching the index fingers of both hands together, and a blush appears on his face, but he says that he has nowhere to spend the night. So he asks if he could ask to stay at her place for the night, since he just has nowhere to go. The girl looks at him with anger and irritation. Suddenly, Lyn Bell jumps up from his chair and screams that he doesn't even realize what time it is. The boy gets scared and prefers to remain silent. The girl asks him in the same raised tones why he is so irresponsible. Suddenly, a third person asks them what is going on here. Lyn Bell and Tatsuya turn to the person who raised his voice and intervened in their conversation and pay attention to her. In front of them is a beautiful adult woman. Lyn Bell is surprised to address the girl as Akane and explains to her that this child has nowhere to stay for the night, so she thought where she could put him so that he could rest. The main character blushes a little at the sight of a beautiful girl. Akane is a little surprised and says that this is really bad. She suggests that Lyn Bell ask Grimace if he can rent a room for the night. The girl immediately sets off, says she will ask him now, and urges him to wait a minute. Akame smiles sweetly and discreetly after her as she leaves, and Tatsuya. Suddenly, the girl asks the boy if his name is Tatsuya. He answers positively with uncertainty, stuttering a little. She leans towards him with a kind smile on her face, still holding the folder with the documents in her hands. Akane tells him not to worry, because if Bell is angry, it means that she is just very worried about him. The girl with a smile on her face encourages him to ask her anything, as she will be happy to help. The main character blushes very much, as he cannot concentrate on her words as his eyes look at her breasts. Lyn Bell finally arrives and tells Akane that Gleema has agreed. She sees a girl and a very red boy turning around and looks at them with a puzzled look. She immediately quickly runs up to them and tries to shield Red from Tatsuya's embarrassment from her friend. She also blushes very much and tells Akane that she should not corrupt Tatsuya since he is still a child. Akane asks if this is true. After a while, they are already in the room for the night. Lyn Bell tells him that he can spend the night here today. There is only one bed in the corner, one chair, and one single mirror that hangs on the wall. Also, the girl starts to get something. The main character is at a loss and watches her actions, not understanding what she wants to give him. She hands him the bread, holding it by the napkin so as not to stain it with dirty hands. The main character is surprised by this caring action on the part of the girl. Lyn Bell says he hasn't had dinner yet. Tatsuya blushes a little and, with uncertainty in his voice, sincerely thanks her, taking the bread from her friend's hands. The girl with a smile on her face says that it's late enough so he should rest. Lyn Bell leaves, and a slight blush appears on her face as she sincerely wishes him a good night. When the main character is left alone in an empty room, he blushes a little and thinks that she gave him bread, and finally becomes convinced that Lyn Bell is an angel in the flesh. Suddenly, the boy looks around the room and notices a mirror. He, still holding the bread in his hands, approaches him and, in surprise, puts his hand to his face, trying to feel him and make sure that his current appearance is real. The main character no longer remembers what he looked like when he was an adult. The guy looks at the bed, which stands in the corner next to the window, and sits down on it with relief, putting bread and a napkin on his lap. He picks up the loaf and takes one bite. The guy continues to bite the bread he is holding in his hands and thinks that even though he is hungry, only a few bites are enough for him to satisfy the hunger in this childish body. The main character folds both hands in a grateful gesture and, blushing a little, thanks Lyn Bell for her dinner in the form of bread. He lies down on the bed and exhales with relief. Tatsuya didn't think he would say this, but now he is really very happy. He has a job, and he also met a very cute little angel. The boy closes his eyes and a slight blush appears on his face when he thinks about Lyn Bell. The next morning, bright sunlight hits the window of the main character's room, falling on Tatsuya's face, who continues to snore carelessly. He sleepily rubs his eyes with his left hand, leans on his right hand, gets up, and is surprised that it is already morning. Strange sounds also reach his ears, and he realizes that someone is shouting. He looks out the large window through which the light enters the room and makes the assumption that it is shouting from outside. The boy slowly opens the door and leaves his room. The main character finds himself in the corridor and goes down a large wooden staircase to a room for registering new adventurers and handing over and accepting an order. Tatsuya sees a large door in front of him. He doesn't know where it leads, but he understands that something is going on behind the door. The boy opens it and, perplexed, looks inside. The main character looks on the other side of the door. He sees in front of him a man who is half naked and training, swinging a large axe from side to side. He notices Tatsuya watching him and looks at him with displeasure. Suddenly and very abruptly, the man disappears. The boy does not see him and wonders where he has gone. Suddenly, the boy sees a man right in front of him and looks up at him. The same one, looking down from above, asks the main character why he opened the door. The boy is surprised by this. After a short amount of time, a man and a boy stand in the backyard of the guild building for adventurers. The man has slung the axe over his shoulder and is looking at Tatsuya. He says with a smile on his face that he realized he was Tatsuya. The main character, with uncertainty in his voice, agrees with him, stuttering a little, and thanks him for the restroom. The man still smiles dazzlingly at the main character, looking at him, and introduces himself as Guildmaster Gerald. He says he is pleased to meet the boy. Tatsuya is a little perplexed and surprised that this is the Guildmaster, and also privately calls him amazing. Gerald says he has heard that he has a box for goods. The boy agrees with him in surprise, looking at him. A man with a serious expression tells him that he is the only one in town who has this skill. He also asks him if he needs to tell him anything right now. The main character again replays Gerald's words in his head that he is the only one who has such a rare skill. The boy agrees with him, not wanting to contradict him. Gerald, with concern in his voice, asks him why he can't sleep at such an early hour. The boy explains to him that he just heard a voice. The man says that he realized that he came here because he was interested in his training and offers to join. The boy politely refuses and says he is fine. Suddenly, someone calls out to Tatsuya and is glad that he is here. Behind the main character, Gerald is dejected by the boy's refusal to train together. It turns out to be his new girlfriend. She smiles and walks towards them. Tatsuya wishes Bell a good morning with joy on his face. The girl also responds in kind. She also wishes good morning to the guildmaster. He greets her too. The main character thinks about himself that Bell is a beauty in the morning. Gerald turns to Bell with a smile on his face and says that she is early today and also offers to do a joint morning workout. The girl says she's fine. Bell and Tatsuya walk away from a man who has wilted due to a refusal to train. They walk hand in hand again, and the girl asks him if he slept well today. He responds positively and says it's thanks to her. They are walking along a corridor lighted by a window, when suddenly someone notices them both and wishes them good morning, and then exclaims in surprise. A boy and a girl see a girl in front of them who looks at them in surprise. She notices that they are walking hand in hand and exclaims in surprise, saying that he is holding hands with Bell. She gets a little angry and realizes that the main character is that child from yesterday. Bell wishes a strange girl a good morning and addresses her as Mel. The girl explains to her that the boy stayed with them yesterday instead of a hotel. The girl also notices that she is also early today. Bell looks at the main character, blushing a little, and explains to her that she was just curious. Tatsuya also gets a slight blush on his face when he notices the girl's gaze on him. Mel says that everything is clear to her, and with curiosity in her voice, asks the main character if he registered yesterday as an adventurer. He responds positively and says his name is Tatsuya. The girl smiles sweetly and rests one hand on her side and holds books with the other, standing on one leg. She blushes and introduces herself as Mel and also says that she is pleased to meet the main character. Tatsuya is thinking about his new acquaintances. Akane is a beautiful and attractive girl. Bell is a talented girl with big sister syndrome, and Mel is an attractive and active 1-year-old. He asks if they have too many beauties in the guild. The main character turns to Mel and asks her if she is younger than Bell. The girl is at first surprised by his question and exclaims in amazement, and then responds positively and says that she was her mentor. Mel begins to praise her friend and mentor in one person and says that she is very sweet, kind, and charming. The girl is a little embarrassed and blushes. Bell is a little embarrassed to tell her that she praises her too much. The girl's face turns even redder at her words and she apologizes to her. The boy considers this a rather strange reaction. The girl turns to the main character and asks if he's going to fight the goblins again today. He responds positively. Bell says she doesn't want him to forget that day and takes out something. Tatsuya is surprised by her actions. An employee of the guild hands him a small map with a marked building on it and explains that this is a map of cheap housing with breakfast and dinner. With concern in her voice, she urges him to return home as soon as possible. After a while, the main character walks down the street of the city and finds the building his new girlfriend was talking about. He looks at the place with surprise and says that maybe this is the place. In front of him is a large building on which numerous logos of the animal's paws are located. He opens the wooden door and walks slowly inside. The main character sees a large room in front of him, but filled with different people, which looks like a dining room. There is a long corner table in the room with visitors sitting on one side and staff standing on the other. All people enthusiastically eat food, and the workers deliver it. The boy sees someone asking for their water. One of them thanks them for the food. The other person agrees with him and thanks him too. The main character is watching this closely, and Tatsuya thinks to himself that they are having a busy period right now. Suddenly, someone next to him asks him, "What's the matter?" A woman stands in front of the main character. Her clothes show that she is an employee of this institution where the main character is going to stay. She wipes her hands on an apron with the building's logo and looks at the boy with a kind smile on her face. Tatsuya answers the question he was asked earlier positively and asks if he can rent a room today. The woman covers her mouth with her right hand in surprise and, being at a loss, wonders if he is an adventurer. He responds positively. The woman says that it is good and that it will cost 4 silver coins in advance. The main character puts money on her outstretched hand and asks if she agrees. The woman says it's great. Tatsuya is a little shy and, clasping his hands, says that he will pay for the accommodation starting tomorrow. The woman makes concessions to him and says that this is also good. The main character leaves the institution that Lyn Bell recommended to him with a smile on his face, and the woman also accompanies him with a good-natured smile in response. The boy walks along the North Market Street of a beautiful city. He looks at the overflowing food stalls. Tatsuya is a little surprised that there is only one market in this area. He thinks that here you can learn a lot about prices and the value of currencies. The guy notices something on the right and says that they are selling bread, looking towards the baking counter. Suddenly, he is distracted from looking at bakery products on the market shelves by a loud shout from behind. Someone exclaims in resignation and asks for help. The main character turns around with surprise in his eyes at the noise from behind. He watches as an elderly man falls to his knees in front of the guard with resignation. A lot of people are going to watch it. Everyone is very surprised, and a man with panic in his voice asks for help since he lost his daughter in the forest. He says that even though they were in a hurry, they had to go through the forest. A man in armor and with a weapon in his hands is at a loss and asks him if he knows that there are wolves in the forest, and they are very sensitive to odors. The knight in front of him says that he is sorry, but he has to convince him that his daughter is no more. The man bows his head lower and begins to burst into tears because of the bitter loss of his daughter. The boy walks away from the heartbreaking picture. He moves to the main exit of the city and silently apologizes to the old man, as he did not have the strength to do so. The main character thinks to himself that he feels sorry for him. The guy leaves the gate of the city, near which there are again guards in armor, and goes to the field where goblin hunting usually takes place. After a while, he hits the goblin with an attack consisting of soy sauce and screams furiously at him to get it. He cannot defend himself and loses to the main character. The guy stretches his right hand forward, and a white sphere and a ring around it appear in front of him, which also disappears after a while. He takes the goblin's body to a storage place. The main character says that this is the 10th goblin he's killed. However, he suddenly turns around. I notice something behind me. There turns out to be another of the goblins. He folds the index and middle fingers of his right hand and, supporting it with his left hand, shoots a ray of soy sauce, acting ahead of the curve. The boy hits him with an attack and kills the opponent. Tatsuya extends his right hand forward, and instead of the goblin's body, a white sphere is in front of him again. He moves the opponent to his storage place and thoughtfully says that sometimes you can use a ray of soy sauce, but it would be more convenient for him with butter. Suddenly, from somewhere outside, the main character hears words about a fireball and turns his attention there. TPM has another adventurer next to him who attacks his opponent in the person of one goblin with fire, igniting him. The other guy watches his goblin burn in flames and is silent. The main character is disappointed and, being at a loss, thinks to himself that this man also looks like an adventurer. He watches him closely and notices that the magic of the flame looks strong, beautiful, and cool. He watches as the guy grins angrily and creates another, but already small, fireball in his left hand. Tatsuya looks sadly at his hand, from which soy sauce is coming in portions, and thinks that he only has this. But he stops himself and thinks that he doesn't want to think about it. Now he just needs to focus on earning money. After a while, Tatsuya walks across a beautiful field and looks at the system window that appeared in front of him. He looks at the goblins in his inventory in the amount of 20 pieces and thinks that he has already defeated his enemies enough and it's time for him to return. Suddenly, he notices something strange to his left and turns his head, perplexed. He looks at the big and dark trees in front of him and thinks that this is this creepy forest. He opens his mouth wide in surprise and is a little scared of this creepy forest. Memories pop up in his head that tell him that a girl got lost here this morning. The main character turns around, about to leave this terrible place far away, and thinks to himself that he has an appointment with Bell, so it's time for him to return. Suddenly, he notices something behind him and turns back towards the creepy forest that scared him some time ago. There is a silhouette in the forest, and he wonders what it is. To the great surprise of the main character, a small and scared girl in a short, cute dress runs out of the forest. She is desperately trying to catch her breath and crying. The little girl is desperate and loudly asks the boy to help her. He is very surprised by his find. She runs up to him and quickly begins to explain to him that there are wolves there. Tatsuya, in amazement, asks her again about the wolves. The girl turns around with horror on her face when she hears a noise from behind. The main character also looks in surprise in the same direction from which the girl ran out some time ago. A lot of wolves growl at them with obvious aggression. The main character realizes that they are surrounded by a very evil pack of wolves and is surprised that this is a real pack of wolves. A girl in tears, and with despair in her eyes, hides behind the main character. Tatsuya is also scared and confused. He remembers that he made a promise to Bell, but this time it seems he will not be able to keep it. A pack of wolves surrounds the main character and the girl from different sides. The latter is shaking with tears in her eyes, hiding behind the boy. She looks at the wolves with fear and presses her hands to her chest. Tatsuya himself is uneasily aware that they are being surrounded. He wonders what they need to do to emerge victorious from this situation. The wolves growl, grin, and glare at them with fury. The hero thinks that they will have to fight, but it will be difficult since he will not be able to direct the oil beam against 5 opponents at once. He's thinking about the battle pattern. They are surrounded by 5 enemies. If you use 2 hands, the remaining wolves will attack them. The girl looks out from behind Tatsuya with fear on her face. The main character resolutely looks at the wolves and realizes that they will find a way out of this anyway. He thinks that he can be used against enemies and tries to remember all his skills and abilities that he can use at the moment. Memories pop up in my head, in which system windows and information on them flash by. The boy desperately realizes that this must be something he has not tried yet, and looks down at his left hand with uncertainty, frantically considering his next actions. He realizes that this may be his only way. The main character, with concentration on his face, thinks that he can create products together with spices. He stretches his right hand forward and, concentrating on a certain product, creates first 1 egg in the palm of his hand and then the second. Tatsuya remembers the girl and looks at her with a little surprise when she asks in surprise why he is doing this. The girl, perplexed, looks at him hopefully, slightly tilting her head forward and pressing her hands to her chest. He quickly holds his nose with 2 fingers and gives her advice to keep her nose tightly closed. A new acquaintance is discouraged by his actions and words. She doesn't understand what he wants from her and what he's going to do. The main character throws the eggs forward, and they break their shells. The girl behind him watches his actions with surprise. The boy sees a rotten yolk and white in front of him, which are slowly spreading on the ground. The girl does not have time to close her nose in surprise, and not understanding why he told her to hold her nose. However, when the smell of rotten eggs reaches her, she covers her nose with both hands, and tears come to her eyes because of the strong stench. 2 broken eggs smell very strongly. The boy, who still keeps his nose closed, pinching it with 2 fingers, says that it is more stressful than he thought. He looks at the broken food that lies on the ground and is secretly glad that he was able to create an egg the way he wanted. The main character was going to create rotten eggs from the very beginning. They look at the broken eggs, which smell terrible, which made even Tatsuya almost collapse from nausea. He understands that scent-sensitive wolves will have a hard time because of such an attack. The girl next to me is very sick from the terrible smell of rotten eggs. The heroes see that all the wolves are defeated and lying on the ground, not moving and not showing signs of life. Their opponents, defeated by the attack with rotten eggs, are scattered throughout the entire territory of the clearing. Tatsuya, still holding his nose, is secretly glad that everything worked and also thinks to himself that it's good that everything is over and he only has to collect the rest, but the sight of the girl makes him distract himself from his thoughts. He looks at the girl next to him, trembling from an overabundance of emotions, with a puzzled expression on his face. She still covers her nose with 2 fingers and says with tears in her eyes that she can't do it anymore. Her eyes, overflowing with tears, slowly close, and her hands stop covering her nose, and she falls to the dirty ground, senseless and unconscious. The main character asks her with concern in his voice if she is okay. He is surprised by her fall, but thinks that she just passed out. Tatsuya looks at the girl, who is lying with her mouth open, and thinks that she just needs to get some sleep. Suddenly, he remembers the defeated opponents lying on the ground next to them. Tatsuya approaches one of the wolves lying on the ground. He stretches his right hand forward, trying to use the wolf's storage, which is covered in fine tremors, to transfer the wolf's corpse to his inventory. However, nothing works out for him, and the main character, still holding his nose, exclaims in surprise, not understanding why he can't use his ability. He wonders why they don't move into the box. The boy comes even closer and looks attentively at one of the wolves, which stuck out its tongue and opened its mouth, surprised to notice a small tremor. The main character understands that the wolf is still alive, which means he cannot keep them stunned. In this case, the main character forms 3 more eggs in his right hand in turn, and with a very creepy expression stretches out his hand, which is filled with rotten eggs forward, closer to the wolf's body. Tatsuya raises his palm, thanks to which he holds his nose. a little higher so that he can see his new victim with his own eyes, and grins angrily, saying that in this case they just need to be given a little sniff of this smell. After a while, the wolf is finally defeated. The remains of a rotten egg are lying around his face. The hero says that everything ended perfectly and the victory was his. He turns them into white spheres and places them in a storage location in his inventory. Tatsuya killed another wolf and wonders to himself if Bell will be angry at him like last time. Memories of how she glares at him with a stern look and addresses him by name, holding a book in her hands, pop up in her head. The main character picks up the girl, who is still unconscious, and gently puts her on his back. He says it's good. The guy can't believe he's saving a girl with a rotten egg. He remembers the broken eggs with the rotten yolk and white floating out in their terrible smell. Tatsuya carries the girl forward on his back, and, thinking about it, blushes a little with a smile on his face. The main character jokingly calls this a historical feat, and walks towards the city along a field and a path. The little girl who sits on the back of the main character, slowly and with uncertainty, comes to her senses. She looks at the boy with bleary eyes. Tatsuya is happy that she has finally woken up and sincerely smiles at her. He explains to her that they are just leaving the forest and returning to the city. The girl exclaims in surprise and asks him where the wolves that attacked her some time ago are. Tatsuya puts her down and scratches her cheek with his finger in embarrassment, covering his eyes. The main character, with a good-natured smile on his face, reminds her that he defeated them with the help of eggs. The girl opens her eyes in surprise and uncertainly asks him about the eggs, but after a moment her expression completely changes to the opposite. She remembers the events that happened before she lost consciousness, and droplets of tears appear in her eyes, and she frowns in disgust and covers her nose with both hands, remembering the terrible smell of rotten eggs. The main character asks her anxiously what is wrong with her. The girl squints, still covering her nose with both hands, and says that this smell smells like rot. Tatsuya makes the assumption to himself that she just doesn't like eggs, and already asks her out loud with concern in her voice if she's okay, looking at her. Suddenly, someone calls the girl from the side. I address her as Elena. The main character and the girl see a man and a cart in the distance, which are rapidly approaching them. An elderly man, harnessed like a horse, quickly runs towards them and calls the girl by name with concern on his face. Tatsuya and Elena are surprised. The girl turns with tears in her eyes and anxiously calls the man her father, looking towards the approaching cart with hope in her eyes. When an elderly man catches up with them, tears also start coming from his eyes, and he hugs his daughter tightly, and there he hangs himself around his neck. Calling her Elena again, he says he's glad she's safe. The girl clings to her father even more and begins to cry even harder. A girl named Elena says that she was very scared because it stank very much. Tatsuya, watching them, wonders if the definition of stinky and scary is equivalent. When the girl finally calms down, she points her finger at the main character and tells her father that it was this man who helped her. The man thanks him. He's a little embarrassed and says with uncertainty that he was just passing by. He holds out his hands, trying to stop him with this gesture. The man asks him to wait a bit, as he wants to thank him now. He must have something. The boy is at a loss and stews a little, telling the man not to pay attention to him. But he takes something out of his cart and asks him if he wants freshly picked eggs and hands him a basket with this product. The young man, with embarrassment in his voice, refuses, says that he really does not need it and asks for forgiveness. The man finally calms down, resigned to the fact that his daughter's savior does not need anything. The girl looks at the eggs with her eyes wide open. Suddenly, with tears in her eyes, she begins to tremble and covers her nose with 2 fingers, exclaiming loudly. Elena screams that she doesn't want to smell rotten eggs. The man does not understand what is wrong with his daughter. He looks at his daughter in disbelief and wonders what is going on. He also says that the eggs are fresh. The elderly man turns back to his daughter, who is frowning, without ceasing to hold her nose with her hands and cry. Tatsuya looks at this painting in disbelief and remains silent. He thinks to himself that it looks like the egg was a more traumatic event than the wolves. He smiles uncertainly and waves his hand a little, saying that he was glad to help them and it's time for him to return. When he turns around and is about to walk towards the city, the man looks after him, and the girl loudly calls out to him and calls him Big Brother. Tatsuya stops in surprise and turns around. The girl he saved quickly runs to him and hugs the boy tightly. The girl smiles, blushing a little, and with tears in her eyes sincerely thanks him for his help. The boy also smiles warmly back at her and blushes a little. The cart drives off into the distance of the horizon, and the girl next to her waves goodbye to the main character. He responds in kind and waves with his left hand. After a while, when it gets completely dark outside, the main character comes to the guild. In the building itself, Tatsuya is surprised to notice a familiar figure and looks at his girlfriend. He is greeted by Lyn Bell, who glares at him, twisting into an evil smile. She folds her arms over her chest, and the main character looks with fright at the girl who is waiting for him at the stairs in response. He panics and realizes that Bell is already in a bad mood. Tatsuya confusedly says that he returned a little later than the scheduled date. Lyn Bell angrily puts her hands on her hips and asks if this is an excuse. The main character apologizes sheepishly. The girl sighs heavily and orders him to follow her. The boy does not dare to contradict her and agrees. They walk through the corridors of the guild building again, holding hands. The girl and the boy eventually come to the backyard of the Adventurers Guild. Volga notices them from afar and looks in their direction. A man with a smile on his face is surprised that Tatsuya came so late. The boy agrees with him and asks to be allowed to open his inventory. He puts his right hand forward and shows the contents of his vault. The bodies of several defeated wolves turn out to be on the table. Lyn Bell is furious and surprised that this time the main character has brought as many as 5 wolves. The boy exclaims anxiously to himself, carefully watching the girl's reaction. Lyn Bell is surprised at this and does not believe in what is happening. The girl remembers how she was very much enraged by those wolves yesterday. She is very angry at the boy and pretends to smile, turning to Tatsuya and addressing him by name. She asks him, with a threat in her voice, what it means. The main character is shaking with fear of the girl and puts his hands in front of him, trying to calm her down with this gesture. Suddenly, Volga, who is standing behind them, interrupts their conversation and turns to the guy, saying that they award him a rating of E. The boy and the girl turn in surprise at the man's words and look at him in bewilderment. Lyn Bell exclaims loudly and in surprise, asking the man again that Tatsuya is getting the E rank. The main character is also no less surprised by what is happening. She tries to convince him and reminds him that he only became an adventurer yesterday. The hero is completely at a loss. Borga stares intently at the bodies in front of her and asks her to look closely at the stricken enemies. He realizes that there are several spots on them, but not a single scratch. The man also looks at the bodies of wolves and says that if there were 5 of them, they would meet in a herd. The man turns to the girl and says that he has the strength to defeat them alone. Borga looks at Lyn Bell and says that he fully meets the requirements for promotion to the rank of E. Lyn Bell is very surprised by his words and decision. The main character idolizes Mr. Borg in his mind and thinks to himself that this is all his merit. He puts his hands together in a pleading gesture and looks at the man with admiration in his eyes. Next to Lyn Bell, she grunts in displeasure. She exhales tiredly and dutifully looks at the man next to him. She reluctantly agrees with Mr. Borga, referring to the fact that since he says so, she can believe his words. Also, the man suddenly puts his hand on the boy's shoulder, wanting to say something more to him. Tatsuya is surprised and doesn't understand what else Borga wants to tell him. A man with a smile on his face slaps the boy on the shoulder and tells him not to let Bella get mad at him for being late again today. He privately tells him not to declare it too loudly. Bell next to them frowns at them. A short amount of time later, the main character and Lyn Bell are standing in the registration room. The girl is at the registration desk, and the guy is standing in front of her and waiting for her actions. Lyn hands him the reward money and the ransom money without any emotion. There's a very evil aura around her, which shows Tatsuya that even though she has come to terms with Borga's decision, she is still angry at him for being late. The main character hesitantly thanks her. He holds the money in his hands and realizes that she is still mad at him, but thinks that this time there is a good reason why he saved the girl. He is sure that if he had told her about this, she would probably have put his head on her lap and started stroking him tenderly, saying that she was not angry since he had done everything in his power. The guy blushes a little, thinking about it, and clenches his fist, trying to decide on active actions. He turns to Bell. She looks at him in surprise. The boy says he was going to keep his promise to come home early today. Tatsuya puts his hand on his chest, trying to show her his sincerity, and with a determined look says that he really was going to deal only with goblins. But on the way there, the girl was chased by wolves and she asked for help. He enthusiastically tells her that he couldn't leave her just like that and falls to his knees. He thinks to himself that it would be more accurate to say that he was just dragged into this. The girl at the reception desk is surprised by his words and opens her mouth in amazement. She walks up to him and sits down next to him, addressing him by name. The main character realizes that he is now a brave adventurer child, and already with a smile on his face imagines how the girl will stroke him as much as she wants. However, a girl with a scary expression asks him where the F-rank adventurer who fought 5 wolves and escorted the girl is. The guy is scared and surprised by her reaction. The girl scolds him severely while Tatsuya sits on his lap in silence. Instead of praising him, she began to lecture him. After a while, the main character leaves the guild building and exhales with relief, looking at his card. As a result, he was lectured for about an hour, but he thinks it was a good time, considering that Bell was completely at his disposal. Tatsuya closes his eyes and cries out, his legs hurt from constantly sitting on them. The boy takes an E-rank adventurer's card with both hands and holds it in front of him, admiring it. The inscription on the map says that Tatsuya is now an adventurer of rank E. The main character is happy with a smile on his face that he now has a new rank. After a while, he is already at the hotel. Today's cat's business is the lunch menu, vegetable and pea soup, and baguette. The main character looks at the food in front of him and wishes him a pleasant appetite. He tastes the food and is surprised that it is delicious. Tatsuya thinks that it is softly melting into his tired body and calls it simply delicious. After a while, the plate's empty, and the boy thanks for the food. The hotel employee says that his room on the 2nd floor is already ready. Already in his room, the main character lies down on the bed with fatigue and stretches, thinking that the hotel that Bell introduced him to was a great help to him. It was another hard day. Memories of fighting a pack of wolves flash before his eyes, and a card on which it is written that he received the rank of E in connection with an increase in rank. Tatsuya also remembers with a smile that Bell yelled at him for the first time today. An image of her pops up in my head. This makes him blush and think about the fact that she is always kind to him, and Tatsuya must repay her properly someday. A week has passed since then. The main character in the guild building wishes Mel and Lyn Bell, who are going to meet him, good morning. The girls walk with smiles on their faces. Bell is holding a stack of various books, and Mel is holding a box and a scroll. They wish him a good morning too. A girl with a smile on her face tells him that he is the first one who arrived today. Tatsuya smiles and thinks that he is gradually getting used to this life in this world. Tatsuya went to the guild first thing in the morning to say hello to Lyn. He asked if anything needed to be delivered today, to which she replied in the negative and said, in a child's body he can't do many delivery jobs. Therefore, he mostly spends his days destroying goblins in that very clearing. The main character says goodbye to them with a smile on his face and says that in this case he will go to pacify the goblins. Bell also smiles at him and wishes him to be careful. After a while, on the field where the main character usually destroys goblins, he unlocks the status. Tatsuya reflects that since he started his journey in this world, the level of seasoning has increased, and he has also been able to learn new recipes. The windows of the system appear in front of him. His title is also shown there, the Sad Magician. The boy thinks about it and puts his hand to his mouth. As he expected, miso and cream are difficult to use in battle. After all, he is used to soy sauce and it is easiest for him to use it. He looks at his box of items where there are 10 pieces of bread and 6 goblins. He continues to save money and now he already has 8 gold coins. As far as he remembers, in terms of Japanese yen, this is about 80,000. The main character notices that he is hungry and says that he needs to cook dinner. He sits on one of the stones and uses his skill to cook chocolate in his right hand. After a while, Tatsuya looks at his food with appetite and is ready to devour the finished dish. He spread the chocolate he made on the bread he bought and he instantly got chocolate bread. There are no delicious pastries in this world, so he uses his skill to make them and eat them. The main character quickly eats his food and thinks that even though it is solid sugar, it is very tasty for him. The boy continues to eat and thinks that he needs to buy dishes and learn how to cook. The main character finishes his chocolate sandwich and is glad that he has finally had enough. He is about to return to pacifying the goblins and gets back on his feet. However, he notices the shaking and assumes that it is an earthquake, but immediately denies his guess. The main character turns back anxiously, as if he heard footsteps. Tatsuya looks into the distance and realizes that what he hears are footsteps. He sees a large orc in front of him and is very surprised by this. He looks very angry and he has a gun on his shoulder. The boy wonders why the orc is here, since they have recently been seen in the north, which is why he hunted in the west. He remembers the plaque with the crossed-out image of an orc. Tatsuya realizes that he needs to get out immediately and starts running away quickly. The monster follows him, not lagging behind. The main character notices this and realizes that he has clung to him tightly and can catch up at this rate. Tatsuya realizes that he can no longer run away and stops in place, thinking that he will have to fight. The orc also stops in front of him and looks at the main character. The main character understands that he will knock him out with one blow, so you need to be ahead of the curve. He concentrates and creates a sphere of soy sauce between his hands, immediately shooting an arrow of soy sauce at the enemy. The attack hits exactly the target, but the orc does not move, completely ignoring him. The main character is alarmed and realizes with panic that the soy sauce arrow is not working. In this case, he is going to attack with rotten eggs and creates them in his right hand. With a loud whistle, a rotten egg flew at the head of the huge orc, which attracted the monster's attention. He managed to wave his hand and smash it right in front of his face, at the same time spraying the contents in different directions. The orc was very annoyed. A moment later, another stinky egg flew into his face. He didn't have time to react. A smeared rotten egg appeared on the monster's face, and the shell flew in different directions. The orc opened his mouth in surprise and pain from the stone, after which he sighed. He was very angry with the young man. The orc got into a fighting position, and then began to growl and scream, opening its mouth even wider. The contents of a rotten egg were spreading on his body, but the orc seemed amused by it. The monster opened its eyes wide, looking at the young man, and there was a strong rage towards him on its muzzle. The young man looked at his opponent in fright, wondering what could be done next. The guy's hands began to shake violently, and Tatsuya understood that he needed to attack rather than this orc would destroy him. The young man with a scared face and open mouth continued to look at the orc and tried to figure out what he needed to do now. There was an orc standing in front of him, who was twice as tall as him, and therefore Tatsuya was so scared that his legs could not move. The monster was already ready for a new attack because he was overcome with rage at the kid who decided to throw eggs at him. Tatsuya was thinking that even the soy sauce and rotten eggs didn't work. Therefore, he began to realize that he needed something more powerful than his old attacks. And that's why the guy opened the profile and started looking at what could help him. Suddenly, he saw what could be called his salvation. After all, he has not yet used one thing that can help him. The orc had already opened its mouth and started attacking to finally destroy its enemy. But Tatsuya raised his hand, from which a stream of dark liquid immediately began, and shouted at him to taste it, and, to be more precise, that he would try his hot habanero sauce. The orc did not understand what had happened, and he did not have time to close his mouth. Therefore, hot sauce began to pour into his open mouth, and the orc still did not understand at all what had happened. After a while, the orc began to scream, and then fire appeared in his mouth. Tatsuya, continuing to hold his hand in the direction of the orc, realized that he was stronger than the guy thought. He decided to tell the monster that there was more to it. Tatsuya completely covered his face with sauce. The monster opened its mouth even more, continuing to emit fire from its mouth. He kept yelling and trying to get rid of the hot sauce. A large amount of sweat and various fluids released from the body appeared on the monster's face. He fell to his knees with a loud crash and was still trying to get rid of the spicy sauce. The orc opened his mouth strongly and stuck out his tongue. He felt very ill from such a sharpness, and he held on with the last of his strength. In the end, the orc fell to the ground, still holding the axe in his hand, and the guy was looking at him. After such a hard fight, he was trying to catch his breath. Later, Tatsuya noticed that his opponent had fallen down, which greatly surprised him. The orc was immobilized. There was still sweat on his face and tears. Snot, drool, and sweat itself were flowing from every part of his face. There was a hot habanero sauce under the orc itself. Tatsuya inserted a stick into the monster's mouth and realized that it was not reacting and everything was fine. Tatsuya used his power and put the orc in his magic box. But suddenly, the young man was shaking again. He remembered the size of the monster he was fighting and how he thought he couldn't handle it. Tatsuya was able to let out a small and quiet, nervous laugh, after which he fell to his knees, still trembling. After such a terrible and difficult battle, Tatsuya went to Lyn Bell's guild. The girl was sitting at the table in front of an open book, and was very surprised that Tatsuya came so early, or rather earlier than usual. The boy was confused and upset about something. His body continued to shake, and his eyes were guiltily lowered. This puzzled Lyn Bell very much. She didn't understand what was causing her friend's sadness. But then, as if she understood something, she asked him to wait. In one of the rooms, a young man and Lyn Bell were sitting on a bed. Lyn Bell was excited and thought that something had happened. But the guy was still shaking, bowed his head, and tried to explain himself. Lyn Bell put her hand on that boy's head and started stroking him gently. And then she hugged him as if she were his older sister, which surprised the guy very much. Lyn Bell told him to go get some rest. Tatsuya blushed a little at her actions and words, and then, feeling very embarrassed, thanked Lyn Bell for trying to support him. And now they had already left the guild building and were walking along a neat path with a canopy protecting them from the sun. Lyn Bell and Tatsuya walked towards the man who was carrying the bags at the time. Suddenly, Volga noticed and was surprised by their arrival. And after realizing that they had come to him, he greeted them joyfully, carefully adjusting his cap on his head. He also saw Lyn Bell gently holding Tatsuya's hand, who was embarrassed by this and therefore lowered his head a little. Suddenly, he used his power, and the orc that the guy was fighting was already lying motionless and lifeless in front of them. The man and the girl looked questioningly and with incomprehension at first at the monster's body, and then at the boy. And Tatsuya noticed that they had such faces, which made him very confused. The boy, already blushing, decided to ask to carve up this monster. The butcher said it would take some time because the young man's order was a bit complicated, so they would need to wait at the counter. After the butcher's answer, the boys followed the same path in complete silence. But suddenly, Tatsuya, overcoming his embarrassment, decided to break this silence, finally deciding to tell what happened to him today. And he told her everything that had happened today. After finishing his story, the stars were already shining brightly in the sky, and it was deep into the night. Lyn Bell listened to his story calmly. As a support, she gently hugged his shoulders and put her chin on his head. Tatsuya blushed and was in a stupor because they were standing too close, and the girl hugged him to her chest. Lyn Bell began to cry, and soon she began to cry, and then turned to the young man, saying that she was so glad that he had returned. And then Lyn Bell praised him, saying that he was doing well. Tatsuya was so shocked by her words that he even opened his mouth in surprise, while remaining red with embarrassment. After that, they stood in complete silence for a while and hugged. But, as it should be by nature, after a long, dark night, the next day came, and the sunny weather allowed bright rays to get through the windows, waking up all people. Tatsuya lay completely covered under the blanket and said that he would not leave the city today. But he needed to do something, and suddenly he remembered something. The boy got dressed and went down the stairs. The woman was cooking and happily wished Tatsuya a good morning. She was surprised that he got out of bed so early today. Tatsuya also wished her a good morning in return, and the woman smiled at him. His attention was attracted by the oven, and at the same moment he turned to the hostess, because he wanted to ask her to use the oven a little when she was free. The woman was surprised, and at the same time she wondered what he was going to do. The guy held his hands behind his back and called for something in them, after which he began to hold it. Tatsuya agreed to tell the hostess what he would do. And today he was going to bake sweets, and he decided to dedicate this day to gratitude. Finally, the guy got permission to use the oven, and he started creating his sweets. He immediately needed flour for cookies and butter. He had already bought everything he needed, so he immediately decided to apply the skill and finally start cooking sweets. Tatsuya was completely delighted. He was holding some chocolate in his hand. And finally, it's time for cooking with natural skills. The delicious smell of cookies began to spread to the city. All the people enthusiastically began to smell this smell and tried to figure out where it was coming from. The whole city was immediately interested in Tatsuya's sweets, and people began to understand where the source of the smell came from. The butcher and the hostess looked through the door at Tatsuya's actions with incomprehension. The guy realized that they were spying on him, and now there were small round cookies on the tray, which gave off a delicious smell. The guy had already prepared a new tray, but before that he rolled all the cookies in flour. Then I put a new portion in the oven. Tatsuya was pleased with how these cookies were cooked. And now there were already a lot of snowball cookies in the box, which were already ready. And Tatsuya covered it with a lid. These cookies were with chocolate chips, and they had an almost perfect ball shape. The guy said he just needed to please Lyn Bell. But suddenly, something caught his attention. Namely, how closely the hostess and the butcher watched him. He was a little perplexed. The guy thanked them for letting him use their oven, but since he cooked too much, that's why the guy suggested they try it. The hostess and the butcher immediately smiled and were glad that they were offered. The hostess realized that these were sweets, and the butcher said they smell so sweet. He also added that these are sweets of the highest class. He was wondering how he cooked them. A woman and a man put one cookie in their mouths, and their eyes betrayed that it was very tasty, as well as delight was read on their face. The hostess was surprised that they had a rich taste, and it was even tastier than the royal meal. The butcher happily turned to Tatsuya because he really wanted the guy to sell them to him, but the boy was surprised by his request and said with full confidence that he would not sell them. The guy realized that it looked like his cooking was to the taste of the inhabitants of this world, and he was very happy about this outcome, but they called the sweets luxury. He realized that apparently they didn't have much sugar. The hostess was trying to figure out how he made them. Tatsuya remembered how the butcher asked him to sell cookies, and for a moment he even thought a little, but he couldn't say for sure that he used sugar, which he made with the skill, because it was a real trade secret. So, it's time to do something. He was going to take the cookies to Lyn Bell as soon as possible. The boy ran very fast down the street and tried to run faster to the guild building. A girl was sitting at the table all alone and was reading a book very carefully. She smiled at what she had read. The girl was sitting straight on the chair, but suddenly something confused her. She saw Tatsuya and looked at him carefully. She was confused by the fact that the boy was covered in sweat and trying to catch his breath. She hoped he was doing well. The guy immediately smiled broadly, trying to prove that everything was fine, and then agreed and thanked her. Lyn Bell said it was great. And immediately she took the guy by the hand, which surprised him very much. She said they were so worried about him. She also asked him not to overdo it and to tell her if he suddenly needed her help. The boy was so delighted with Lyn Bell that he said with a flushed face that she was just an angel. Lyn Bell wondered if the boy would sell his loot from yesterday, and Tatsuya immediately agreed with her. And Lyn Bell had already looked at the piece of paper, saying that in total he would receive. He comes out with as many as 30 coins. The boy did not expect so many coins for this monster, and therefore the guy was surprised that he even opened his mouth. Lyn Bell said that orcs are D-class monsters, which is why they get so much for them. The guy tremblingly held a bag of money in his hands. Before that, he had been working for 8 coins for a whole week, and here he received such an amount at a time. But that's not what he came for. After all, he had come to thank her. Tatsuya turned to the girl, and she smiled and waited for what he would say, but the boy only blushed even more. The young man asked to wait a little while. At the same time, he grabbed his hand and turned away from her. She smiled and looked at him questioningly. He began to get very nervous, because in 32 years he had never given a girl a gift. He didn't immediately think that it would be okay to give her these sweets. Or rather, is it okay to give her sweets that he made himself? And finally, after taking a little breath and calming down, he gathered his thoughts. The young man, flushed, handed Lyn Bell a round box with a bow and said that this was for her, making Lyn Bell blush a little. And, in general, the young man decided to take this step because Lyn Bell was always so kind to him. Tatsuya was very embarrassed and held on to the box tightly, and he was very grateful to Lyn Bell. So he only wanted her to accept this gift from him. The young man opened the lid of the box, and there were a lot of round chocolate biscuits. The boy offered her a treat, saying that they were cookies. The boy was confused and awkwardly continued to hold the box. Lyn Bell stared at him in surprise, her mouth open, and did not understand what he had done. And then she screamed, drawing people's eyes to her. Lyn Bell realized that it was a cookie, and immediately realized that he had made it with his own hands. Lyn Bell was delighted. Tatsuya was redder than a tomato from embarrassment. He did not understand why he shouted and attracted attention so much. She timidly apologized for it. The guy was very embarrassed and thought that she did not like sweets at all. Lyn Bell smiled sincerely and happily, and also later shook her head in denial, saying that, of course, she loves cookies very much. But since cookies are a very expensive gift, and this is the first time she gets one, and she was both embarrassed and pleased that she was being given such an expensive gift. She looked at these cookies with complete admiration. It was like sweets were really expensive things in this world. The girl drew attention to the cookies, namely the dark inclusions, because she did not understand what they were. Tatsuya proudly said that it was chocolate and that it was delicious. The girl tilted her head towards the liver and sniffed it. After that, she said that the smell was delicious. With these words, she embarrassed the guy very much with her words. He felt awkward, and I wanted to run away from here, but Lyn Bell was already interested in how he did it. Tatsuya said it was a secret. And he also added, even more embarrassed, that he had made a lot of them, and she would definitely have to eat them with the rest. The guy was very worried when he said all this and randomly touched his hands, showing how much he was worried. Later, unable to stand the embarrassment at all, he shouted that he had already run. Lyn Bell shouted after him to wait at least a little because she wanted to say something. Tatsuya turned around and looked at the girl. She happily thanked him for trying and preparing such a gift for her with chocolate cookies. She will eat them with great joy and treats them with value. Lyn Bell was holding a box of cookies and smiling happily. Tatsuya left the guild. After saying that it was very awkward for him because it was the first time he gave something to a girl, he squatted down, hugging his knees with his hands, which surprised passers-by. He blushed even more after thinking about what had happened. He was proud that he was able to please her and decided that he would cook more. It was deep into the night. The stars shone brightly in the black sky. Lyn Bell was finishing something with a fountain pen in her hands, after which she felt a little tired and eventually exhaled, after which she stretching her back. She looked towards the window and saw the moonlight shining through the guild window. Lyn Bell realized that perhaps it was time for her to get up, because it was already quite late and it would be time to go to bed. Lyn Bell was on the second floor of the guild, and clutching her stomach began to feel that she was already quite hungry. The girl began to think about what she could eat. And so Lyn Bell looked in surprise through the doorway, and saw that in the lonely room for the guild workers on the table was the same round box with a bow that Tatsuya had given her this morning. It was the same cookie that the embarrassed little Tatsuya had given her. Lyn Bell went to the table and started to open the box, but she felt a little insecure. There was joy on her face and anticipation of the food she was so eager to take. Suddenly, Maru grabbed her back from behind, and one could say that she bumped into Lyn Bell's back, and at the same time she screamed the girl's name. Lyn Bell awkwardly turned around, not understanding when Maru managed to return. The girl said that she had just arrived. But suddenly something caught her attention. Maru realized that the girl had received a round box with a bow from Tatsuya. And she also remembered that Maru had heard Lyn Bell say something about cookies, and after that she thought it was actually a joke. But there was no response from Lyn Bell, which surprised Mara a little. The girls started to open the box, and only after that Lyn Bell said that she wasn't a bit wrong, and it was really the cookies that Tatsuya made for her. Maru still didn't understand why Tatsuya had given Lyn Bell such an expensive gift. Lyn Bell said he made them himself, with his own hands. This surprised Mara a lot, especially the fact that he made them with his own hands. Maru looked thoughtfully at the box and began to come up with options or reasons for such an expensive gift. After all, even simple cookies were very difficult to get, and the ingredients alone are very expensive, and if you make a mistake in the recipe, you can lose a lot of money. Also, first of all, most people won't even think about making it themselves. And yet, how can you cook such a large number of delicious-looking cookies? Maru turned to Lyn and wanted to make her suggestion. She asked Lyn Bell if it was possible that Tatsuya was actually the pastry chef's child, and she said she didn't think so at all. Besides, Lyn Bell wasn't sure if he was an adventurer. But suddenly, the door opened abruptly and a girl entered the room of pleasant appearance with a cap on her head and with a wide smile and holding flowers in her hands. She wished the girls a good evening. Maru noticed that it was Akane who came and said that she had done a good job today. Lyn Bell also turned to face the newcomer and wished her a good evening, and also noticed the bouquet in her hands and said that it was quite beautiful. Akane started showing her bouquet to the girls and said that it was a gift from an adventurer, but then Akane noticed Lyn Bell, and later her attention was attracted by a box that stood on the table. She realized that Lyn Bell had also received something today and happily said that it was a very beautiful box. Lyn Bell said that this round box with a bow was a gift from Tatsuya. The girl laughed gently and said that it was very similar to the fact that Tatsuya had already fallen in love with Lyn Bell. And Akane wondered what she got from him. Maru and Lyn Bell exchanged glances and awkwardly remained silent. But then they opened a small round box with a bow to show Akane what kind of gift Lyn Bell had from this little young man. In front of Akane's eyes were hundreds of small round cookies in the same round box with a bow. The girl realized at the same moment that it was a cookie, and also added that the young man seemed to love her very much. Lyn Bell immediately said that he was just very grateful to her, and then he told her to eat them with the rest of the girls. Akane said that it was still a lot to thank Lyn Bell. She also wondered where he got them at all. Lyn Bell said, feeling a little uncertain and confused, that it was like he had made these cookies on his own. Akane was very indignant and did not believe it, because she believed that it could not be true at all. But Lyn Bell looked sadly at the cookies in the box, and wasn't even going to think that Tatsuya was one of those boys who would lie. Maru supported her friend's words, saying that she also believes that Tatsuya is telling the truth. The girl also remembered that he smelled very good, but if you could think that, then it was still a mystery. There was still a box of cookies on the table, which beckoned the girls to try it. But they just sat silently and looked at each other, as if they were waiting for one of them to start doing something first. But suddenly, Lyn Bell's stomach rumbled. The girl felt embarrassed by this and blushed. The others were still silent and looked at Lyn Bell, then at the cookies. Her stomach rumbled again. Akane pulled her fingers to her mouth. But at the same moment, she took one cookie in her hand, while surprising the girls with her movement. After that, she suggested that it would be possible to try to eat them, and if he really cooked them for them. She thinks they definitely have to eat them. And still in the dead of night, the girls decided to try Tatsuya's cookies. They were holding cookies in the form of balls in their hands and staring at him intently. After that, the girls wished each other a pleasant appetite, and they simultaneously threw cookies into each other's mouths. At the same time, their faces began to show various emotions, joy and pleasure from eating chocolate cookies. The girls' faces showed happiness. They obviously liked what they ate. Maru was licking her lips, chocolate-flavored. And Lyn Bell said it was the most delicious thing she had eaten in her 19 years. And it was still delicious in my mouth. Maru said that this is the first time she has tasted real happiness. Her eyes were burning with delight and joy. She really liked the cookies, and they gave her pleasure. And Akane said that it was so delicious that she was tired after work. At the same time, the girl looked completely relaxed, and at the same time, the girl leaned on the back of a chair. The cookies had such a very pleasant, soft, and silky texture. The crunch when chewing this cookie and the rich sweetness filling the mouth. Akane wondered what those black pieces were. Lyn Bell replied that it seemed to be chocolate. Akane said that she had not heard of such an ingredient, but she still had a very pleasant, bittersweet taste in her mouth. Maru said that she would have to ask Tatsuya later where she could get it. The girls reached for another batch of cookies again. Their hands grabbed another cookie and they put them back in their mouths. They didn't know what to do because it was too delicious. The cookies gave them a distinct pleasure. They absolutely couldn't stop eating these delicious chocolate chip cookies. And they took another portion of chocolate chip cookies into their mouths to feel that pleasant, bittersweet taste again. In the room, the girls could be heard crunching cookies with gusto. The girls turned to Maru, saying that it would be unfair if she took 2 at a time, but she replied that she just puts 1 on each side of her mouth. Therefore, you can take 2 pieces each. Akane said, turning to Maru, that she would not do this because it is not allowed, and she must eat 1 at a time. Maru immediately said that even Akane is now eating 2 at once. But she replied that this cookie was a little cracked, so it could be considered 1 piece. Maru and Lyn Bell said in one voice that these were just excuses. But then Maru turned to Lyn Bell because she noticed that Lyn Bell put a cookie in her mouth without chewing the previous one, saying that it wasn't fair at all. But she said that she cares about Tatsuya the most, so it doesn't count at all. After arguing for a long time, the girls continued to eat cookies, losing their measure, trying to overtake each other. Their meal could be heard outside the guild building. Finally, the round box was empty and all the chocolate chip cookies were eaten. They started saying it was so delicious and they would eat like that every day. But Lyn Bell looked at the happy and well-fed girls and was silent. She saw that the chocolate chip cookies had already completely run out, and Lyn Bell was saddened that the cookies made for her had completely run out. Maru said that she needed to thank Tatsuya when he came tomorrow. Akane supported her thought. Tatsuya made them such delicious cookies. Lyn Bell thought that she needed to take even more care of Tatsuya, and she told the girls that she had to get up early tomorrow. After that, Akane and Maru wished her a good night. That night, Lyn Bell walked under the lights. She had a bag slung over her shoulder, and in it was a box that had cookies in it not so long ago. She was thinking about how delicious the cookies were. After her thoughts, she put her hand to her chin. She was struck by the fact that cookies are still an expensive gift, and she also couldn't believe that they had prepared sweets for her that made her so happy, and the girl assumed that Tatsuya really likes to cook. She realized that she definitely had to tell him that it was very tasty. After all, it was Lyn Bell who liked Tatsuya's sweets the most, and she already dreamed of telling Tatsuya about her impressions. The morning was approaching, and the sun was beginning to rise from the horizon. And at this time, the wolf was watching the approaching figure towards him. He was tense and serious. He was standing in a fighting position and just waiting for the opponent to appear. The girl's figure was moving so fast that it was almost invisible, only dust. The wolf bared its jaws terribly and was already ready to engage in battle with her. He was trying to wait for the right moment for the perfect attack. But before he could do anything at all, a girl had already attacked him. The wolf did not have time to do anything, as he was already pinned to the ground. His powerful body, full of menace a moment ago, was now helplessly pinned to the ground. It was noticeable how much he began to tremble from the force of her blow, and a hoarse howl escaped from his mouth. Foam began to come out of his mouth, and the dust from this attack had already begun to disperse. The girl sighed and tried to catch her breath after this easy battle. And finally, after a while, she said that she was hungry for something. This girl had blonde hair and 2 ponytails tied in bows, and she also had second ears like an animal. She also wore gloves resembling armor on her hand. At the same time, what was happening in the guild, Tatsuya had already arrived there in the morning and had been there for some time, and suddenly he was called out. It was Maru, who was rapidly approaching him. The girl was running towards him very fast. As soon as she ran up to him, she immediately grabbed his hands, which surprised the guy very much. She said his cookies were delicious, and for the first time, she was over the moon with happiness. After these words, she thanked the boy very much. He was very embarrassed and said that he was not grateful. His heart rate scale began to rise, and he began to blush violently. Immediately, behind his back, he was suddenly addressed again. This time it was Mrs. Akan, and she covered her mouth with her palm while saying that the cookies were really delicious, and Tatsuya said that he was very glad that they liked it so much. Suddenly, the girl hugged the boy tightly, hugging him to her chest. The young man became even more embarrassed, and cold sweat appeared on his face. Akane expressed her gratitude to him, and the guy tried to escape from her tight embrace. The guy didn't understand their reaction, he just gave them cookies. His heart rate began to go off the scale, and he was on the verge of fainting. Suddenly, Akane remembered that Bell had given him permission to destroy the wolves. Tatsuya thought she was talking about Lyn Bell. She was worried that he had just managed to reach the E level and was still quite a child, but Mr. Volga was able to push her, saying that if it was Tatsuya, then everything would be fine. The guy thought that Lyn Bell wouldn't be mad at me if he defeated the wolves, and so he wondered where Lyn Bell was now. And he headed down the road where they had hugged a short time ago. They greeted each other joyfully. After that, they began to joyfully run towards each other. Lyn Bell said his cookies were so delicious that they couldn't come off, and I thanked him very much. Lyn Bell continued to hug him tightly, her warm breath warming his skin. His heartbeat scale was simply bursting. He could feel the blood rushing through his veins. He was shocked that even Lyn Bell liked his cookies too. Tatsuya thought he was going to faint, but he prayed that it wouldn't happen here. He was afraid to fall into the dirt in front of such a wonderful girl who most likely he really liked. Tatsuya was so red that he didn't know exactly what to say to him, but then he turned to Lyn Bell. He said that he had heard that she had given him permission to eliminate the wolves. Lyn Bell realized that Akane had told him this. Lyn Bell is still very worried about him. After all, the other day he was able to destroy an entire orc. And after talking to Volga, they decided to give him at least one chance to deal with the wolves. And Lyn Bell strongly believes that he can still beat them. But most importantly, Lyn Bell only asked him not to overdo it. Lyn Bell asked him to promise her that. The boy agreed. But Tatsuya knew that Lyn Bell was such a kind person and always tries to take care of him. Tatsuya remembered something and turned to the girl once again because he needed to find out something from Lyn Bell again. After all, he baked another batch of cookies this morning, and if she suddenly wants to, then they can eat cookies again with everyone. Lyn Bell was shocked because it was all him again, and Lyn Bell started apologizing for what she said yesterday, but Tatsuya had already swiftly run away from her. But he also shouted after her that he would then immediately go to defeat the wolves. Lyn Bell tried to restrain herself from eating these cookies at the same moment because Lyn Bell knew that these chocolate cookies were so delicious. Meanwhile, the boy was already right at the north gate. Tatsuya noticed that there were a lot of adventurers near the gate, and beyond the north gate there is a highway, namely a busy place where monsters often appear. Therefore, it is a good hunting spot for adventurers. Tatsuya walked along a lonely path and decided to go into the forest. Huge crowns of trees and bushes had already appeared in front of him. He was walking slowly along the path and had already started to get off it. He was looking at the bushes, which were already moving, and whether it was the wind or whether it was some kind of animal. The sounds of wolves were already heard in the thicket of the forest. They howled as if they were calling him to finally engage in battle with him. Tatsuya had been in the forest for 3 whole minutes, and that was already enough for him to get scared. Tatsuya began to tremble a little, and cold sweat had already appeared on his face from the impending fear. And the fact that he couldn't see the monsters and didn't know when they would jump out at him made him even more scared. The guy decided to remove the rotten eggs for a while so as not to accidentally break them somewhere. And he noticed something after he entered the forest itself, but he was still holding those rotten eggs in his hands to fight wolves or any other monsters that might come his way. It was quite difficult for him to spot the enemies with just his field of vision. After all, when hunting in places like this, for example, it might seem to him that it was better to have his own group than to go absolutely alone to fight monsters. And perhaps it was possible to assume such a probability that Tatsuya has such a fate, or to be quite a bit more precise, to be a loner without having his own group or squad. But she began to wonder if there could be a group that would accept him, and that there would be at least one. After all, his fighting style is quite different from the usual ones, namely, which throws black liquid and rotten eggs out of his hands. And if he can find such a group, then he would be very happy. And he would be especially happy if all the members of his group were beautiful girls. He decided that he needed to memorize this idea, and when he returned, he would talk about it with Lyn Bell. Birds suddenly appeared in the sky, which began to caw loudly, attracting the young man's attention. Tatsuya realized that something was running towards him from the forest on the other side, and he felt the earth tremble. The guy realized that it must be orcs, but it was too narrow here, so he would have to run back to a better vantage point. The guy turned around and made sure that it was exactly the orcs, but he was surprised that it was just the 2 of them. The orcs, like a pack of hungry wolves, rushed in pursuit of Tatsuya. Their menacing roars echoed through the forest, making the trees tremble. Tatsuya, his heart pounding in his chest, raced along the narrow paths, trying not to lose his way. He could feel the heavy footsteps of the orcs approaching, and fear gripped his body. They started running after him with their arms outstretched. And based on previous experience, once the orcs find out about you, it will be impossible to escape, and you have to be careful with them. Tatsuya stopped abruptly, his heart pounding in his chest. He mentally apologized to Lyn Bell, because he realized that he would not be able to keep his promise. He was weak, powerless against these ferocious creatures. The guy called rotten eggs into his hand. Tatsuya figured they probably thought he was a very tasty food, but he was already in a hurry to disappoint them, because he was the man who was going to defeat them in a very quick battle. At the same moment, rotten eggs began to fly at the orcs. There were several dozen of these eggs, and they were completely starting to warm up these orcs. He'll scatter them so that they won't have a chance, and they should be howling in anger at the smell of these eggs. The orcs were silent, their wide faces distorted by a mixture of shock and disgust. Tatsuya stood with his nose covered and was surprised that the orcs weren't angry. They looked at their body, which was smeared with rotten eggs, and cried. Their sobs were hoarse, as if their souls were bursting with pain, and one would think that these orcs were in a depressed state. Tatsuya did not understand what was wrong with them and suggested that it might be depression, and it felt like the eggs had done more psychological damage than anything else, and in that case, he can use his other weapon. The orcs became angry. Tatsuya used hot habanero sauce and said it cheered them up. The orcs began to be covered with a lot of hot sauce. Fire began to appear from their mouths and tears from their eyes. The orcs felt very bad. They were crying and there was a lot of sweat on their face. Hot sauce continued to fly into them. Their wide muzzles were distorted with a grimace of disgust, and their eyes were watering. Tatsuya was pleased with himself and continued to throw the sauce in different directions. The young man felt powerful and invincible. The orcs were already holding on with their last strength. They were trying to catch the air, but at the same time they fell down without strength. Tatsuya began to approach them, realizing that he was able to defeat 2 orcs at once. This agile kid straightened his hair and shouted that that was it. The young man had a feeling that he was getting stronger. After all, he destroyed 2 orcs, but he doesn't know how to explain it to Lyn Bell. A woman's voice rang out behind him, the same girl who fought the wolves and who said that this guy was so strange. The boy couldn't figure out who was here, also thinking that he had been seen. A charming girl came out of the forest, who immediately attracted the attention of a young man, and her figure made its way through the foliage. Tatsuya stared at her, forgetting about the orcs he had destroyed just a few minutes ago. She kept saying about him that he was weird. Her voice was melodious and a little mocking. Tatsuya didn't understand why she said that, but he was intrigued by this mysterious girl who had entered his life so easily. The girl repeated again that he was strange. Her voice was slightly mocking, but there was no malice in it. Tatsuya was embarrassed to be called that. He also couldn't figure out why. He didn't know who it was, but she was pretty enough. But for some reason, she calls him weird. He also noticed that she had big breasts. The girl said she saw him. The girl said that the way he fought, it was strange. Tatsuya realized that the girl had seen him destroy them with spices. And he knew that yes, his fighting style was very specific and undeniable. But it still hurt him when it was said so explicitly. The girl said that he was producing some kind of strange liquid or egg. She was trying to figure out what it was. The guy didn't think she understood what a skill it was. And it was embarrassing, so he had to come up with something. In the end, he said that it so happened that he had them with him. The girl looked at him suspiciously. The guy thought it was time to deal with the orcs. The guy was going to put it away. The girl thought that he had a magic bag. But the guy said no, it was just a box of objects. The girl understood everything and said that it was a rare skill. Tatsuya couldn't figure out what a magic bag was. The girl was surprised that he didn't know that. She began to explain that this thing on her waist is a magic bag. It's like an item drawer, but it doesn't stop the time of the items that are put in it. The guy was trying to figure out how much he could hold. The girl said there were about 2 average orcs. Tatsuya thought about it, because the bag wasn't as big as the box, but it was a very otherworldly object. The girl's stomach began to rumble. She was obviously hungry. The girl clutched her stomach to hide the sounds, but to show that she was hungry. Then they stared at each other. The girl was waiting for some action from Tatsuya, and she got pretty close to him. The girl said that she was disappearing from hunger, and she smells something sweet. The guy thought she was trying to say that he had food. The girl said that yesterday, when she saved the family from the attack of demons, they looked hungry, and so she gave them everything. The guy was going to give her cookies, so he first offered them to her, saying that he had a lot of them. The girl immediately agreed. He gave her 1 cookie to taste, and the girl's eyes immediately widened in surprise. She looked at what was given to her, then sniffed it, and Tatsuya thought that she had probably never seen them before, which is why she was so wary. So he decided to show that it was edible and ate the cookies himself in front of her. He took a bite and said, seeing her curious look, that he had proved his point and hoped that she could see how crispy they were. The girl, charmed by his delight, looked at him. And then, succumbing to temptation, I decided to try. She took a bite, and it was immediately clear from her face that she really liked it. He decided to ask her opinion about this cookie, as a hand immediately reached out to him. Her eyes shone with delight. Because the cookies are very tasty, she stood with her hand outstretched and asked for more. The guy was happy and agreed, giving her some more cookies. He thought she liked it, because she was crunching chocolate chip cookies with such pleasure. The girl held 2 cookies in each hand and said she wanted more. After a while, the girl was sitting on the grass, and the guy next to her. She said it was delicious, and she was full. The girl looked at the guy, who looked back at her a little surprised. The girl thanked him for the cookies, and she said she was a B-rank adventurer, and also her name is Suzu. The guy was very surprised, especially that she has a B rank and that she is so strong. After that, he introduced himself, saying that he was an adventurer of the E rank. But the girl was still curious. She crawled up to the guy quite close and began to examine him, as if studying him as a new kind of animal. Tatsuya was confused and didn't understand what was going on. Suzu said Tatsuya was weird, and so she decided that she would follow him. The guy couldn't understand why she needed it. Surely she was going somewhere. The girl just raised her hand, pointing in a certain direction, and then she said that she was heading in a certain direction, namely to Frieia, and that was why they decided to go together. The weather was pleasant outside. The sun was shining brightly, and the air smelled of the forest aroma of a sunny day. Tatsuya and Suzu walked along the path in silence, and so the guy decided to find out what brought her to Frieia. The girl said that Frieia was her homeland, and until recently she was in the capital and has not returned for a long time. The guy realized that this meant Frieia was her hometown, and if you think about it, for some reason Suzu looked like someone else. He couldn't remember who exactly, but he felt that her features were familiar to him. The girl did not understand why he was looking at her like that. Her eyebrows furrowed a little, as if she was trying to figure out his thoughts. Tatsuya immediately blushed with embarrassment and said that it was nothing. The girl's hair began to move. They looked like ears. For some reason, she turned around, but remained silent. And then she said there was something there. They were looking at a deserted road, on which an orc soon appeared, walking quite calmly across the field. The guy did not know that there was another orc nearby, and it was quite far away from him. He didn't understand how she found out about it. Suzu said it was an intuition. After which she added that she would take care of it. The girl was looking intently somewhere, her eyes sparkled with an incomprehensible gleam, and Tatsuya thought that she was going to destroy him. He couldn't understand what was going on and felt helpless. The girl got down on all fours, her body became flexible and graceful like a cat's, and she went somewhere, leaving him in complete obscurity. Tatsuya was still trying to say that they were still a few miles away, and they need to get out of here before they noticed them, but the girl had already run away from him, which surprised him greatly. The girl moved at breakneck speed, creating wind pulses and circles next to her. One might even think that this was a pipe made of dust that was connected by circles. Tatsuya realized that she was moving on all fours, and even so fast. Suzu flew straight towards the orc like a cheetah, and her movements were fast and graceful. It was only as the girl approached that he saw her. His eyes widened in surprise. He clearly did not expect Suzu to appear next to him so soon. There was not a drop of fear in her eyes, but only unrestrained rage, which made the orc uncomfortable. A bright light appeared near the orc, and at the same moment a girl appeared. The orc tried to hit her with the bat, but she had already jumped back. She landed on her haunches, her movements smooth and precise. The orc was shocked by her speed and agility. The orc immediately followed her, but the girl hit him in the face at the same moment. The orc started coughing from such a blow. He felt bad, and he tried to do something or attack the girl, but she was too fast and agile. Tatsuya realized that it was a sweeping blow, and he was very surprised. The girl swung her leg, and then she swung her fist. Her powerful blow landed right in his torso. It folded in half and flew a little above the ground. The orc felt sick. Sweat dripped from his face, and a lot of saliva came out of his mouth. His mouth was open, and his tongue was sticking out to catch his breath and get at least some oxygen into his body. But after that, he fell without signs of life. At the same time, Tatsuya ran up and was amazed that she had already done everything for him. After that, he told Suzu that it was amazing, and he was amazed by her abilities. After all, it was very difficult to defeat an orc with brute force. The guy told the girl that she was just super, and that's what it means to be a B-rank adventurer. The girl was silent, which made Tatsuya think. He was confused by the girl's silence, but he was just happy for her rank and her skills. Suzu turned around after a while and said that she wasn't that cool. She blushed at the same time. Tatsuya blushed a little. As it turned out, what made the guy so surprised was that she was embarrassed. He thought it was very sweet. The girl pointed her finger at the orc, asking Tatsuya to remove it. He immediately agreed. He pointed his hand at the orc and it immediately disappeared. The girl thanked him and said they could go. And the guy was haunted by this feeling that they seemed to be together, in the same group. Tatsuya decided to contact Suzu, thinking that she would want to create a group. She didn't give an answer to his question. Her stomach rumbled again, and she asked for more cookies. Tatsuya looked away from the girl with an awkward smile. The boy looked sheepishly at the girl in front of him and wondered. The boy looked at the girl who was saying that she was tired. He was wondering why he wanted to see the girl defenseless so much. Suzu lay down on the table with her body, which made Tatsuya see her breasts. He abruptly turned the other way and blushed deeply. The boy couldn't figure out how it happened. A few hours ago, Tatsuya and Suzu were standing together in front of the entrance to a large building. The boy was silent for a while, and then turned to the girl behind and asked if she was really following him to the guild, to which she replied in the affirmative. Tatsuya looked at the bewildered girl and wondered what would happen if he came to the guild with Suzu. He imagined how Lyn Bell would be shocked that Tatsuya had come with a girl, how she would ask what their relationship was. He thought that the girl perceives him as a younger brother, maybe she will be surprised, and begin to perceive him as a representative of the opposite sex. Suzu interrupted his thoughts with a question about what he was doing. She told him to come in. Tatsuya, confused, tried to call out to the girl who had already opened the door to the guild building. Tatsuya and Suzu appeared in front of the girl. The boy was in a stupor, because Lyn Bell was standing in front of them with papers in her hands. She also looked quite confused. Tatsuya thought in panic that they had immediately bumped into each other. He began to justify himself to Lyn Bell, saying that this girl happened to be in the forest, when suddenly he was interrupted. Lyn Bell asked them a question about why they were together, which made Tatsuya slightly confused and asked what the girl meant. He couldn't understand why she addressed both of them, as Suzu nodded and answered the girl's question by saying that they met by chance. Suzu turned to her little sister and said the words that she was at home. This discovery greatly shocked the boy. He was shocked to think that the girl had called Lyn Bell a sister. They stood silently and looked at each other at the counter. Tatsuya turned to Suzu with a question about whether the girl was her sister. Suzu just nodded silently at the guy's question. Lyn Bell answered instead of Suzu at that moment. She explained that the girl was supposed to return from King's Landing in 2 years. Tatsuya could only grin at such a story. He was still shocked by the fact that the girls were sisters. He thought about how, when he first came to another world, Lyn Bell became his first friend. However, the guy couldn't even think about Suzu being her sister. A thought suddenly occurred to him. Tatsuya clenched his fists in delight and thought that this was really fate, when suddenly Suzu turned to Lyn Bell with words that the boy was strange. Suzu said the words that, however, these cookies were very tasty. Lyn Bell asked if Suzu had eaten them too, Tatsuya's homemade cookies. Suzu looked at the guy in shock and asked if this meant that the cookies were made by hand. Tatsuya replied awkwardly in the affirmative. The girl said the words that he was getting weirder and weirder. Lyn Bell apologized for her sister. She said that Tatsuya cooks sweets well, and then asked if he could cook food well too. He began to suspect something. He replied to the girl that he could cook his own food. Lyn Bell asked what the boy was cooking. Tatsuya thought for a while and replied with the words that he was cooking steaks and omelets, which greatly impressed the girls. Lyn Bell exclaimed the words that she wanted a steak. The guy was very surprised, and Suzu asked if the boy could make it from the meat of the orc they had just killed. Tatsuya thought about it and replied that if he had a kitchen. At the same moment, the girls stretched out their arms and exclaimed enthusiastically that they would lend him the kitchen. The boy looked at them and thought that they must both really like steak. He asked the girls what to cook for him. Unexpectedly, the sisters will cook a steak. Suzu and Lyn Bell clapped their hands with a joyful shout. Tatsuya thought it was very sweet that they were so happy. He suddenly wondered if this meant that they would go home to the girls. Tatsuya was thinking that this was a divine event, when suddenly he was called out. Lyn Bell asked the guys with an intimidating smile what they meant by the orc they had just defeated. Tatsuya thought in a panic that they had discovered themselves and Lyn Bell hadn't missed it. He started mumbling something, and Suzu said the words that the boy had recently played with 2 orcs. Tatsuya called out the girl's name in confusion. Lyn Bell called out the guy's name threateningly, which made him lower his head and ask what happened. The girl said the words about what she had told him. As a result, the boy was scolded right in front of Suzu. The girl locked the door and thought that it was okay. Suzu asked Lyn Bell if the girl had finished, to which she replied in the affirmative. After that, they went home. After some time, the guys found themselves in front of the entrance to a large house. Suzu called out to the guy, saying that they were going there. Lyn Bell nodded and said the words that it was an old house, so it might be a little uncomfortable. Tatsuya was thinking that he was going to a girl's house for the first time in his 32 years of life. He imagined a situation in his head where Suzu shows him the bathroom and Lyn Bell changes clothes there. I wondered dreamily if something like this could happen. But his thoughts were distracted by the girls who called out to him and called him into the house. He awkwardly agreed. They entered the house. He apologized for the trouble. He thought to himself that maybe he got into the house of 2 angels. The boy looked around and thought that the girl had said that this was an old house, but everything was clean and tidy. Tatsuya listened as Lyn Bell told Suzu that she never leaves clothes on herself. The boy thought with a smile that he knew Lyn Bell was a good woman. Lyn Bell pointed the boy to the door, saying that it was a living room. She said she was going to get dressed and asked the boy to wait for her in this place for a minute. Tatsuya thought with a smile about Lyn Bell getting dressed. He went into the living room when he suddenly saw something. His gaze fell on a girl whose breasts and legs were visible because of her very short clothes. Suzu was sitting at the table and trying to reach something. The guy thought that the girl had such open clothes, which made him unable to even look where he was going. He went to a chair and asked if he could sit here, to which the girl replied in the affirmative. Tatsuya looked around again and thought that it was quite a large living room for 2 people, while Suzu was still sitting in front of him. Suddenly, an awkward silence was interrupted by a voice. Lyn Bell apologized for keeping them waiting. Tatsuya looked at the girl in the dress and thought about Lyn Bell in her home clothes. He liked him. He also thought about the fact that now he has more opportunities for his eyes. Tatsuya stood up and said the words that he would then occupy the kitchen, which Lyn Bell happily agreed to. The boy went to the kitchen. He looked around and thought that she was fully equipped with kitchen utensils. The guy opened his skill window and noted the fact that the number of condiments that can be made has increased again. The list included ketchup, mayonnaise, and instant coffee, and the sweets had fragrant coffee and so on. Suddenly, the girl called out to the guy, who quickly hid his window and answered the girl's call. Lyn Bell came into the kitchen saying that she had a lot of vegetables if the guy needed them. They were under the table. The boy asked the girl about the vegetables. He looked at the indicated place, where he found the vegetables. The box contained carrots, potatoes, and onions. There were more vegetables than one person could use. Tatsuya picked up the vegetable and thought that he could cook it with this seasoning. He picked up a pot and decided that then he would use it all and please both girls. The boy poured water into a saucepan and put the vegetables on the stove to boil the potatoes and the peel first. After that, he began to chop onions and carrots. He put the board on the table and began to chop the vegetables. Tatsuya cooked some chopped vegetables. He thought that carrots should be slightly soft. Next, he had to peel and puree boiled potatoes, then mix with cooked vegetables. After that, the boy used his skill to make mayonnaise to lubricate the vegetables abundantly. After all this, add salt and pepper to taste. Tatsuya made a potato salad. Everything was ready for the side dish. The boy took a large bowl to put it in the refrigerator. Now he started cooking the main dish, orc meat. He took out a large piece of fresh meat. After that, he began to slice the orc meat into thick slices. Tatsuya then seasoned the meat with salt and pepper. The boy put the meat in the pan with the thought that it was necessary to carefully fry the meat over medium-low heat, covering with a lid, with the inside out. After that, turn off the heat and serve the dish on the table. And at the end, pour the sauce into a frying pan. Tatsuya, using his skill, poured the sauce, which goes well with the meat, and after that you need to pour it over the steaks. The boy cooked a thick steak from an orc. He went out to the girls with words of gratitude for waiting. The guy quickly set the table. He set down a large bowl with side dishes and thick orc steaks. Suzu and Lyn Bell looked at the food enthusiastically. They were shocked, and Lyn Bell asked if it was definitely okay to eat it, to which the boy replied in the affirmative. Suzu looked at the side dish and asked the boy what it was. Tatsuya replied by saying that it was a salad made from potatoes. Lyn Bell asked about the salad and then exclaimed that it looked delicious. They decided to start eating. The girls were very excited. Suzu had already grabbed the appliances, and Lyn Bell wished her a pleasant appetite. With a cry of delight, Suzu stuck her fork into a thick orc steak and quickly picked it up. The girl took an appetizing bite from a large piece of meat and began to chew actively with a twinkle in her eyes. The other girl carefully cut the meat into small pieces. She stuck her fork into a piece and also began to chew the meat. Suzu was completely amazed at how soft and juicy the steak was. The girls exclaimed words about how delicious it was. Lyn Bell was chewing on an orc steak with tears in her eyes, thinking about how the taste of meat fills her mouth. Tatsuya thought that he was glad that they liked it. He said the words that the girls should also try the potato salad. He put the salad in their bowls, filling them to the brim. Suzu carefully spooned lettuce into a spoon and looked at him. The girl looked at her sister, after which the girls nodded at the same time and put the spoons in their mouths. They mumbled something with delight when they tasted the potato salad from the boy. Lyn Bell asked if it was definitely a salad. She said it was so soft, flaky, sweet, and tart, but the more you eat it, the faster you get used to it. With her mouth full, Suzu uttered words about how delicious it was. She couldn't stop eating it. Tatsuya was amazed by the girl's reaction. He said that there was still some left, so they could eat plenty. The girls were enthusiastically actively eating, and Tatsuya couldn't believe that they were eating his food with such passion. He decided that it was worth the effort spent on cooking. He thought about how girls are so cute when they eat. Suzu was actively chewing on her food when she started to say something. They listened to her in silence. The girl called out to her little sister. Suzu said the words that the boy is strange, so she wants to create a group with him. Lyn Bell turned to the girl in shock and asked what she meant. Tatsuya was also amazed. They couldn't believe that Suzu was talking about the band. It's night outside. Suzu called out to the guy, who for some reason was suddenly seized with fear. If anyone is interested in how he ended up in a similar situation, he will tell you. The girl told him to hurry up, otherwise she would leave without him. The answer to that question was simple. The guy got into a situation between life and death. He was very scared, sitting on a log over a precipice. The girl said that if he got up and ran, it would be faster. A few hours earlier, they were still in the city. Lyn Bell asked the guys about the name of their band. Suzu looked at the boy and replied that this was a temporary group, so they didn't need a name. She just wanted to look after the boy. Tatsuya was shocked by this statement. He asked the girl why she wanted to keep an eye on him. Suzu replied by saying that he was suspicious. He has a strange fighting style. It's also strange that the food he cooks is too good. Lyn Bell thought about something with a smile, and then spoke. She said that if you think about it, Tatsuya is not a bad guy. He can also kill orcs, but he has his own oddities. And he can also make such delicious sweets that her cheeks almost fell off. This surprised the girl, so she quickly reached out to Lyn Bell, who replied that her cheeks were fine. Tatsuya thought that this was a chance to get to know Suzu better. He thought that if they teamed up, I would be exclusive chefs transporting goods. He would also like to complete the task for the two of them right away. Tatsuya imagined Suzu telling him to take away the dead orcs and then telling him that she was hungry, so she asked for cookies, and the guy did everything. He also imagined the girl thanking him. He would definitely like to move from a temporary to a permanent group, and maybe even date Suzu. The girl tried to thank him, but they didn't listen to her. The guy was pulled out of his thoughts by Susa, who called out his name. He thought about her being close, which surprised him. The girl said the words that they have a task, so it's time for them to go. The group of Suzu and Tatsuya got into the carriage and set off. The boy was thinking that this was his first time riding a cart. Suzu thought that this was not the most comfortable trip. The girl called out the guy's name and asked him where Tatsuya was from, which took him by surprise. Tatsuya asked why the girl suddenly asked, to which she replied that although their group was temporary, she would like to get to know him better. The guy thought that he couldn't say Japan, another world, or something like that. He replied by saying that it was a rural area in the east. He came from there. The girl replied that she understood, after which there was an awkward silence. They rode, sitting next to each other. Tatsuya thought about how good it was that Suzu wasn't particularly interested. At some point, the girl leaned against the guy. He glanced at Susa, who appeared to be dozing off. The guy thought that she had fallen asleep and looked so defenseless in her sleep. He decided that he would wake her up when they arrived. They rode in the carriage like that for a while, until Tatsuya dozed off in response. He also rested his head on the girl's shoulder. In his sleep, Tatsuya heard his name being called. He opened his eyes slightly, drooling. He saw that he had been lying all this time on the girl who informed him that they had arrived. Tatsuya shouted loudly, and then apologized loudly as well. Suzu replied that everything was fine because the boy was not heavy. After some time, the guys arrived in a small village with fields. Tatsuya looked around and thought that the fields were badly trampled. He wondered if the monsters had done it all. Suzu and Tatsuya came to a large house. The girl went to the door and knocked gently. The door was opened by an old man who nodded to the guests and asked the guys who they were. Suzu introduced herself as a firecat, a B-rank adventurer. She informed them that they had come on request and handed over her guild card. The man was very surprised because of the girl's words. He looked at the card carefully and asked again about Suzu's nickname. Tatsuya had no idea that Suzu was called a firecat. The old man exclaimed that they should immediately summon everyone in the village. People nearby, hearing about the firecat, began to call out to Susa. Tatsuya wondered if Suzu was really that famous. While he was thinking, the man opened the doors to the house and told the girl to come in. He looked at the boy, telling her companion to come in too. Tatsuya uttered the words that he was also an adventurer. He tried to advertise himself, but the locals came running with questions about whether the Lady Firecat was really here. Suzu and Tatsuya were sitting at a small table in front of the headman, and the locals were standing nearby. After that, Tatsuya heard about this request. 3 silver wolves appeared in the village, raiding fields and food warehouses, making hunting difficult. Therefore, they sent a request to the Adventurers Guild, asking them to destroy the silver wolves. While the guy was telling the guys about the problem, Tatsuya thought of something, namely that in any case, everyone in the village is very exhausted. Maybe they don't sleep well at night. Suzu listened to the residents' words and replied that in general, the situation is clear. She said that from that evening, they would begin surveillance. Tatsuya asked about what this silver wolf looked like, because he hadn't met one yet. The girl asked if the boy really didn't know. She said that he has silvery fur, and is 3 times the size of an ordinary wolf, as well as smarter. Suzu said the words that, as far as she understands, they are like dogs. Tatsuya thought that everything would be fine as long as Suzu was around. They went outside, where the headman turned to Suzu with the words that the Lady Firecat would take care of the rest. He was just about to say something about the residents when the girl interrupted him and called out the boy's name. She asked Tatsuya to give her 20 kilograms of orc meat. The guy asked why she needed it, despite the fact that he had already guessed. He used his space, agreeing with the girl's words. He waved his hand, and a huge piece of fresh orc meat appeared in front of them. These actions have confused residents. Suzu said the words that it was difficult for her to eat all this food, so she would like them to take them. Residents enthusiastically called out to Susa and asked if it was true. Tatsuya thought that no one could see him. The girl was undoubtedly the heroine of this village. Tatsuya thought about how he would like to help the village. He stretched out his hand and imagined a giant lump of salt. He awkwardly called out to the girl, who turned around to look at the boy. Tatsuya stood next to a huge lump of salt and thought that he had made too much of it. The boy confusedly uttered the words that it was rock salt. He had a lot of it, so if the residents needed it, they could take it. The headman looked at the boy in shock. And after that, the residents began to shout about how happy they were because it was precious salt, which they had not eaten for many years. The villagers began to call the boy the master of rock salt. He tried to introduce himself through these screams and thought that apparently salt is very appreciated here. While the villagers praised Lady Firecat and the master of rock salt, Suzu looked at the boy, asking where he got so much salt. Tatsuya awkwardly looked at the girl, who was embarrassed, and said the words that the guy was strange after all. Night has fallen in the village. Suzu used her skill to summon a fireball on her arm. After distributing the orc meat and salt, Suzu and Tatsuya explored the area and the nearby forests. The boy identified areas near the fields where footprints were most common. Tatsuya, sitting in the bushes, asked the girl if surveillance was hard work because it would take all night. He looked at the girl with interest. Suzu agreed with the guy who thought that the girl should be a good adventurer because she was so focused. The guy thought that a good adventurer needs good support. He decided that he needed to cook something for Suzu to keep him awake. Tatsuya thought about it, and then turned to the girl with the words that he would leave for a while. Suzu agreed. The boy called for a cup and a kettle of boiling water. He said how good it was that he put a few things in the box with the goods just in case. Tatsuya looked at his window, where there was information about instant coffee. He began to cook, using a little sugar for the sweetness. After that, he poured hot water, which turned out to be coffee. He said the smell of coffee was very soothing, but the boy would like to add something else. He found the sweet additives section, which had chocolate, sugar, and cream, just what he was looking for. At that time, Suzu was still sitting in the bushes and watching what was happening. The girl suddenly smelled something and looked questioningly. Suddenly, Tatsuya called out to Suzu by name, which made the girl prick up her ears. Tatsuya approached her with a tray and asked if she would like to continue her surveillance with coffee with cream and cookies. The girl asked if coffee with cream was some kind of drink. Tatsuya replied by saying that it was a good drink to stay up all night. The girl picked up a cup of hot drink and took a sip. She suddenly opened her eyes. Suzu has traces of cream on his face. She trembled all over and opened her mouth with an ecstatic sound. She was surprised to say that the drink was delicious and with a slight bitterness. The guy was glad that Susa liked the coffee. The girl silently looked at the whipped cream. She suddenly said the words that everything was fine, which made the guy confused. Suzu, holding the cup in her hands, said the words that would do for her anyway. Tatsuya looked at her in embarrassment. The boy tried to call the girl by name, when suddenly they were interrupted by a noise that immediately attracted their attention. The guys immediately leaned out from behind the bushes to see what was going on. Suddenly, they noticed a wolf. Tatsuya said the name of the girl who covered him and, putting her finger to her lips, hissed, saying that she knew. She said the words that they were here, and there were 6 of them. Silver wolves appeared in front of the guys. While the guys were looking at what was happening from behind the bushes, even more silver wolves began to appear. They began to howl loudly, and the girl quickly turned to Tatsuya with words that he should not approach. Suzu uttered the words that she would deal with 3 of them in the blink of an eye. After these words, the girl rushed forward. She ran out to the wolves, and Tatsuya mentally shouted after her that she was acting very rashly. The silver wolves turned their attention to the girl and growled, preparing to attack. Suzu swung her fist and landed a powerful blow right on the muzzle of one of the silver wolves. From such a powerful blow, the wolf flew away. She thought that the first one was ready when another wolf began to approach her from behind. The silver wolf tried to attack the girl, but she noticed him and stepped aside. Why did the wolf get confused? Suzu quickly struck at him. The second one was ready when another wolf rushed at her, with its mouth wide open. The girl felt it. Suzu quickly turned around, which is why the wolf missed, not having time to grab the girl. And she quickly punched him in the face. The other two silver wolves who were in the bushes just watched, and then began to retreat altogether. The girl looked at them and called out the boy's name. Tatsuya quickly peeked out from behind the bushes. Suzu uttered the words that she would go after those two, and she would leave the third one to him. She told him to take his time. Suzu ran after the wolves. Tatsuya also ran, but in the opposite direction, agreeing with the girl. Tatsuya ran and looked away, wondering where the silver wolf was. Suddenly, a monster jumped out of the bushes at him. The boy turned around in shock and saw the huge mouth of the silver wolf, which was rapidly approaching him. Tatsuya quickly dodged so that the silver wolf could not attack the confused boy. Tatsuya looked at the wolf and got ready. The boy did not even think that the wolf would ambush him. The silver wolf growled loudly at the boy and rushed forward. Tatsuya realized that the wolf was attacking him. Tatsuya waved his hand and used his skill. It was a volley of rotten eggs that surrounded him. The boy quickly created a barrier of eggs. This completely neutralized the wolf that was attacked by the stink. Tatsuya also covered his nose from this. He almost vomited from the smell. But thanks to this, he was able to defeat the wolf. Tatsuya covered his nose with his hand and thought that the silver wolf had been defeated, but something bothered him. The boy's eyes watered. He could not understand what kind of smell it was. After all, even he, a man, felt sick. He wondered if his skill level had increased, so he quickly opened his window. Tatsuya was very surprised by what he saw, because the indicators did not change a bit. Everything is as it was, and it remains. With his nose still closed, he noticed a text that said that a status correction was taking place, and 40 minutes remained. He couldn't figure out when it started. The boy could barely hold on. He was thinking that it smelled so bad that he couldn't concentrate. He thought that he should clean up this place and remove the wolf. Tatsuya quickly removed the wolf's body when Suzu returned to him. The girl noted the fact that the boy had defeated the wolf. The boy confirmed the words of the girl who said the words that he was still strange. Tatsuya was shocked to think that he had won. Tatsuya suddenly turned to the girl and said that she was also strange. The girl is incredibly strong, which is also quite strange. At these words, Suzu silently looked at the guy in front of her. After that, she calmly replied with words about what it means that they are both cranks. Tatsuya agreed with these words. Tatsuya and Suzu then returned to the village and reported the completion of the task. The headman apologized for the difference between the request and the number of wolves. The residents thanked the guys very much for bringing peace back to the village. The next day, Tatsuya and Suzu left the village as they decided to return to Frieia. The goblin sitting in the bushes held a baton in his hands and growled angrily when a powerful blow flew across his face. It was Suzu who noted that there were a lot of goblins in this place. Frieia could be reached by wagon, but they decided to walk because Suzu said it was safer that way. Tatsuya turned to the girl and said that she always fights like a cat. He asked if she had any beastmen in her family. The girl replied in the negative and added words that she is often called a cat-like. Suzu added that she had been in trouble before because she licked her sister's ears. She still loved doing it. Tatsuya imagined Lyn Bell screaming for the girl to stop. He thought he would like to see it. The boy asked the girl if she could use various types of magic. Suzu replied that she couldn't. She was only good at fire magic. Tatsuya understood why the villagers called her that. Suzu asked the boy the same question. She wondered what he had with magic, like the one he used in battle. Tatsuya awkwardly scratched his head and replied that he didn't have any magic at all. He could just get it from the item box. This made the girl think. The boy also thought that yesterday the effect was improved by raising the status. He wondered if rotten eggs were considered magic. Suddenly, Suzu shouted for the boy to wait. She came up to him and took him by the arm, which surprised the boy. Tatsuya was very embarrassed and blushed from such actions. He asked the girl why he was suddenly acting like that. Suzu looked away with interest and told the boy to look in that direction too. There were a large number of strange creatures in the clearing not far from the guys. Tatsuya couldn't figure out what it was. He asked confusedly if it was a bird. The girl answered in the affirmative. She said that it was a popo bird. They somewhat resemble chickens. These birds have A rank, they are strong, but they are afraid of water. Suzu added the words that they are also very tasty. The girl held the boy by the arm and looked at the birds with great appetite. Tatsuya asked if this was her favorite food. He asked her to let go of his hand, otherwise she almost broke it. Tatsuya said the words that then they were acting according to plan. He stretched out his hand and used his skill. Tatsuya launched soy sauce over the heads of these birds. He thought with a happy smile that he would make a rain of soy sauce for the birds. The birds seemed to pay attention to the rain that fell on them. They started screaming in shock, and then they got really angry. Tatsuya noticed that the birds were heading in their direction. Suzu said the words that she would take care of the rest herself. She thought that the rain must have weakened the birds. The girl quickly headed towards the angry birds, who were also running towards the girl. They were very angry, so they shouted loudly. Suzu stopped at some point. She was soaked from the rain, and sauce was pouring down her legs and clothes. The girl stopped and got ready for something. Tatsuya looked at the girl in surprise, because he was familiar with the stance the girl was standing in. The angry bird quickly approached Suzu, who swung her fist for a powerful blow. The girl struck a direct blow with her fist directly at the bird, which caused a powerful shockwave. After a while, all the popo birds were defeated by Suzu, who looked at them and dusted off her hands. She said the words that 6 would be enough. Suzu abruptly turned to the boy, telling him to take them away. She was very excited. Tatsuya replied to the girl that he would cook her something when they returned. The girl was still covered in a rain of sauce. She wanted to get back as soon as possible, but she decided to stay late. She noticed something in the woods. Suzu said the words that there was some kind of pond and she was going to wash up. The surface of the water glistened slightly from the light. The boy was sitting on the shore and thinking about the girl bathing in the water. The girl left her equipment next to him. After that, Suzu went into the water up to her waist, which caused her clothes, as well as her hair, to get wet again. Tatsuya looked at the girl with a smile and thought about what a beautiful sight it was. Suddenly, Suzu abruptly turned around and looked somewhere. The girl called out loudly to the boy, who was completely absorbed in his thoughts. He replied in confusion. In the blink of an eye, Suzu was next to the boy. She quickly knocked him to the ground and looked around. Tatsuya was embarrassed by the girl's actions, so he blushed. Suzu said the words that it turns out to be okay because it's just a goblin. The girl looked from the monster behind the bushes to the boy, apologized, and asked if he was okay. Tatsuya was lying on the grass, completely red, and thinking about the girl lying on top of him. Suzu called out the boy's name. After a while, they found themselves back in the city. The birds were singing loudly, which made Suzu's ears twitch. The girl waved her hand and, turning to her sister, said the words that she was at home. Tatsuya looked at her with a smile and thought about how positive she was. Lyn Bell looked at her sister who had returned and smiled. She greeted me and said that the girl had returned earlier than she thought. Lyn Bell asked Suzu about how it went, and then added a comment that Tatsuya meant. She asked the girl if she had behaved well. Suzu replied that a weirdo is a weirdo, but they completed the task perfectly. Tatsuya pouted a little because he was still a weirdo. Had Suzu's opinion of him not changed at all? Lyn Bell put a bag on a table with the words that this was their rewards. She added that the girl would then definitely go to Mr. Volga and ask him to carve up the loot. Suzu hesitated a little and turned to her sister, who looked at the girl with a little bewilderment. The girl put her hand to her mouth and whispered some words in Lyn Bell's ear. After that, Lyn Bell looked up at her, and Suzu nodded. Lyn Bell exclaimed something about popo chickens in shock and delight. Suzu confirmed the words, saying that there were as many as 6 of them. The girl trembled slightly and asked if they really had popo chickens for dinner today, to which the boy replied in the affirmative. Lyn Bell clarified whether her portion would also be made from them, to which Tatsuya also replied in the affirmative. The girl excitedly exclaimed the words that she wished everyone a good job. This made the other girls interested in what was happening. A little later, they found themselves in another place. Wolf stood with his mouth open in shock and stared at something in front of him. There were a large number of huge popo birds on the table, and Tatsuya and Suzu were standing nearby. The girl asked the man if he could pluck the birds, to which he replied that the girl had been gone for so long. He exclaimed the words that it was really because of these chickens. He started asking the girl to sell them to the guild, preferably at a wholesale price. Suzu replied with a sharp refusal because she herself has nothing to eat at home. This refusal made the man feel very sad, and Tatsuya just silently watched what was happening. The boy turned to the girl with an offer to share. each of them 10 kilograms. He said that it would be enough to cook a delicious dish. These words interested the girl, who pricked up her ears. She confidently agreed to Mr. Volga. She said she would give him 10 kilograms. The man asked in shock if the girl was joking. Suzu and the man began to actively discuss something while Tatsuya stood next to them and thought that everyone in this place seemed to be crazy about chickens. After that, the guys went back home to the girls. Suzu changed into her home clothes and sighed. She yawned, covering her mouth with her hand. Then she asked if the food was still ready. Tatsuya replied with a smile that he wasn't ready yet. He handled the rest of the ingredients. The boy turned to Susa, telling her to rest properly for now because she hadn't slept much lately. The girl just mumbled something in response. She got up from the chair she had been sitting on and went to the opposite side of the table. There was a small blanket on the floor nearby, on which the girl quickly lay down and closed her eyes. Suzu curled up and quickly fell asleep. Tatsuya saw her sleeping on the floor as he passed by. The boy came closer to the girl and carefully covered the sleeping Susa with a blanket on top. He thought with a smile that she was really very tired. Tatsuya would like to always look at her sleeping like this. After that, the boy returned to the kitchen, where he continued cooking chicken popo. Tatsuya thought about cutting the meat into small pieces first. He got down to business. Next, he began to add meat to a mixture of soy sauce and ginger. It was also important to add seasonal ingredients. The meat needed to be thoroughly marinated. After that, seasonal vegetables and pickled meat should be rolled in flour and breadcrumbs. And then you need to fry them in a deep-fried pan, heated to 180 degrees. Tatsuya thought about how he hadn't deep-fried anything in a long time. He carefully took out a small piece of fried meat with long sticks of hot oil. Suzu, who was sleeping at the time, felt an appetizing smell, which caused her ears to move. The girl got up from the floor, still sleepy. Saliva flowed from her mouth, so she swallowed it loudly. Tatsuya was holding a large plate of fried popo bird meat in his hands. He thought that after frying, it was best to put the fried meat in a wide bowl. Suddenly, a hungry Suzu peeked around the corner, looking at the boy attentively. Tatsuya was surprised because the girl had already woken up. He went up to Suzu and asked if everything was okay. The girl replied that while she was sleeping, she had the taste of fried meat in her mouth. Tatsuya asked in shock if the girl was drooling. After that, Suzu said the words that she was going to get her sister. The boy agreed because it was already time. Suzu went outside, humming along the way. Tatsuya watched the girl leave enthusiastically. He returned to the house and thought about doing business for now. He took a tablecloth and covered the table with it. The boy put a kettle of water on the stove and prepared a large amount of fresh bread. Tatsuya pushed his chair back and thought that everything was ready. He just had to wait for the girls. He had cooked the meal and was now sitting and waiting for the sisters to come back and sit down at the table. It suddenly occurred to him that they were just like a family. Suzu's singing was heard. The girls joyfully entered the house, holding hands. Lyn Bell exclaimed the words that they were back. Tatsuya was surprised that they were so fast because Suzu had just left the house. The boy told the girls to wash their hands thoroughly. The girls agreed. After that, they sat down at the table. Lyn Bell and Suzu looked at the boy with burning eyes, and he said that everything was in place now. After that, Tatsuya smilingly placed a large bowl in front of the girls, presenting them with fried chicken and tempura. Lyn Bell and Suzu froze and looked carefully at the food in front of them. The boy told them to eat well, and if they wanted, there was a supplement. The girls looked at the fried meat in confusion and did not know how to react or what to say. Tatsuya became worried and thought that the girls still hadn't rushed to the food. He asked them if there might be something wrong. Suzu said the words that it was impossible, which caused the boy a little bewilderment. The girl said that the adventurer's intuition tells her that once she has tasted this dish, she can no longer eat anything else. Lyn Bell, trembling, looked at the meat and said that it tasted even better than it looked, which is quite dangerous. Tatsuya awkwardly uttered the words that they ate and were not shy. Suzu took a small piece of delicious fried chicken with chopsticks and looked at it carefully. She quickly began to eat it, and her eyes shone brightly with appetite. She was absorbed in the process. Lyn Bell followed her sister's example and carefully picked up a small piece of chicken with chopsticks. The girl also began to actively eat a new dish from the boy. The girls chewed meat at the same time. Suzu raised her head up and closed her eyes, from which tears quietly flowed, which made the boy panic. Lyn Bell put her hands on the table and rested her head on them. Tatsuya called out to the girl and asked what happened to them. With her eyes closed, Suzu uttered the words that fried chicken would never be the same for her. Lyn Bell replied that she had decided everything. She said she was going to live with fried chicken. Tatsuya was wondering what to do because it seemed that the girls were getting too emotional. The sisters said that the chicken has a dense golden crust. It is crispy on the outside, but inside it melts in your mouth. It was so juicy that the juice leaked out of the meat with every bite. It was the best fried chicken. Tatsuya was shocked to ask if anyone wanted more when he saw the empty bowl. The girl was shouted together that they both wanted. Tatsuya thought that he seemed to have finally found his way to the sisters' stomachs. At this time, someone was running fast and breathing heavily. The man called out to the head of the guild, saying that trouble had happened. The man quickly asked what had happened. The messenger replied by saying that an army of orcs had appeared. They were informed that they were moving towards Frieia. This message greatly shocked the man. The head of the guild said that the orcs could easily destroy the whole city. The crisis was approaching. Suzu sat on a chair and thought about how she had started to feel it quite recently. Something strange was happening to her. She suddenly refuted her own words because she knew about it from the very beginning. Her movements became much easier, but her strength, on the contrary, increased. The girl reflected that she was getting tired less often. All this happens to her only when she eats the food prepared by the boy. She was chewing fried chicken and thinking that she was still feeling a little exhausted, but the food was helping to make up for it. Suzu looked at the boy and thought that maybe he had some special skill, but he never mentioned it. The girl interrupted herself because what was she thinking about? She was eating the chicken intently. Tatsuya noticed this and asked if everything was okay. Maybe the chicken was burnt somewhere. Suzu waved it off and replied that she just suddenly thought that the boy's cooking was too delicious. She asked what he was adding there, maybe some seasonings. Tatsuya was a little confused by this question. He hesitated, not knowing how to answer. Lyn Bell exclaimed for him to answer. Tatsuya thought that he had used his skill and created spices from scratch, which he added to the food. He wanted to say that, but he had no idea how the girl would react. He said that there was nothing there, just ordinary spices from the bazaar. Suzu mumbled thoughtfully and thought that the boy's face was painfully suspicious. The next day they went outside. Suzu said the words that the city seemed to have gone crazy today. Tatsuya agreed because there were unusually many people on the street. The boy suddenly noticed something. He saw a crowd of people and thought that it looked like a whole crowd had gathered at the guild. They suddenly heard a message about an urgent evacuation, which puzzled them. People were worried about their business because the whole city was evacuated. The man loudly exclaimed the words that he was repeating, that this was an order. He said that according to the instructions of the guildmaster, all residents should leave the city immediately. It was not a drill, the evacuation was urgent. Tatsuya listened to the announcement in shock. He couldn't believe that an urgent evacuation of an entire city was taking place when he was suddenly called out. Suzu looked around and said the words that her sister probably knew something. She told Tatsuya that they were going to the guild. The boy was surprised, but agreed, while people were informed from behind about the evacuation. Lyn Bell turned around anxiously and was surprised. She sighed and said the words that she thought, "Where did the guys go?" The girl approached Suzu and Tatsuya. Suzu asked her sister if something serious had really happened. Lyn Bell lowered her head excitedly and replied that she also only found out about everything this morning. She told the guys that a huge army of orcs was moving towards the city. This news amazed the guys. Lyn Bell said that if they wanted more detailed information, it would be better to ask the guildmaster about it. She said that right now he is calling all the guild members to an urgent meeting. The guys replied that they understood. The head of the guild seriously uttered the words that everyone was finally assembled. He said that the situation was urgent. The men said they would not repeat it, so they should listen carefully. Tatsuya and Suzu came to listen to the man. The boy wondered who these people were behind the guildmaster's back. The man said that in the north, about a day's journey from the city, there is a small settlement. They received a message that 10 days ago orcs were spotted there, about 100 of them. The head of the guild reported that the situation was critical, so he sent for help to the capital guild. The man said that the guild quickly responded to the call, and here they are in front of them. He introduced the people nearby as the strongest team consisting of A-class adventurers. They are called Immortal Birds. Tatsuya looked at them and thought that just the sight of them showed that they were much stronger than many of them. The head of the guild went on to say that when they arrived at the designated place, something unexpected happened. He turned to Care, who was standing next to him. He immediately understood what the man meant. The guy introduced himself as Kairu from the Immortal Bird Squad. He said that his squad moved into the settlement as soon as they received their guildmaster's message. However, when they were in place, they were unable to complete the task. The residents of the city excitedly began to ask the guy why it happened. Kairu was silent for a moment, and then he told me that the message referred to an army of 100 orcs, but in fact, there were more than 300 of them. The residents were shocked by what they heard. Kairu said that many of them did not look like ordinary individuals of this species and had some typical features for them. The guy said that they decided that they couldn't do it alone, and so they came to the city to report it. Tatsuya and Suzu stood and listened in shock. The head of the guild said that when the immortal birds reported to them about the situation, a detachment of the strongest soldiers was allocated to help them. The man added that, however, as soon as they returned with reinforcements, there were already 500 orcs. He said that not only were they moving towards their city, so they were forced to declare a state of emergency. According to their calculations, the orcs will arrive in the city in about 6 to 7 hours. The head of the guild gloomily said that, in this scenario, there would be nothing left of the city by evening. It is likely that the orcs are planning to settle in the city. Tatsuya and Suzu were shocked. The boy could not believe that the city would be destroyed. People didn't know what to do because they had never encountered such a thing, especially with so many orcs. The man said that all residents would be evacuated to a village to the west of the city. He said that reinforcements had already been sent from the capital, but it was unlikely that they would arrive in the city on time. The army of orcs will be at the gates of the city much earlier. The man shared that, in this regard, he had the following plan. He said that all members of the guild of rank C and below will play the role of a kind of bait. They will distract the enemies and take them to the agreed place. A squad of adventurers of rank B and above will be waiting for them there. So, 2 squads will be able to attack the orcs trapped in the ring at the same time, which will take them by surprise. The head of the guild said that, of course, they would not be able to completely defeat them, but at least they would damage their ranks and hold out until help arrived. The guys listened in silence while the man explained the plan. He added that there was a catch, though. At the moment, the bulk of their guild consists of newcomers without proper experience. However, he said that despite this, they should not let the orcs destroy their homes. To implement the above plan, they simply need the help of adventurers. He asked everyone who was ready to fight to raise their hands. There was a commotion among the people. The adventurers were scared. One guy trembled and said he wouldn't go. People started talking about the fact that Class A is needed for such large-scale missions, and here only ranks C and D. The guy next to the boy said that there were few brave men in the city who would dare to go against the orcs. Tatsuya thought about how he had once fought 3 orcs, but here it was about 500. Even if he tried to fight them, they would have no difficulty dealing with the boy. Suddenly, someone confidently raised his hand up. Suzu said the words that she was ready, which greatly surprised the boy who called her by name. Suzu said that Frieia is her hometown, where she was born. She said that as a Class B adventurer, she couldn't let some orcs destroy her house. The girl confidently uttered the words that for this reason she would fight for him. The other adventurers looked at the girl in confusion. They took turns declaring that they would go too. After all, they are responsible for this city, and they can't just give it to these enemies. They were ready to fight to protect this city. The head of the guild looked at the people in shock. He was shocked that Suzu and everyone else responded. Suddenly, Tatsuya called out the girl's name and informed her that he would also take part in the battle. The girl looked at him seriously, after which she replied that she would never allow him, which surprised the boy. The girl uttered the words that Tatsuya was an E-rank weakling, which hurt the boy. He clenched his fist and replied that he just wanted to protect the girl, and he has something he would like after the battle is over. He said the words that maybe she would finally agree to join his team. There was complete silence. Everyone turned their shocked gazes in the direction of the boy, who was very confused. Tatsuya thought awkwardly that it sounded like a marriage proposal from the outside. Suzu blushed slightly at these words, but she pulled herself together again and agreed. However, she told the boy not to put himself in danger. Tatsuya agreed with the girl's words. He was suddenly hailed by the head of the guild, who called the boy for a moment. Tatsuya approached him, and the man said that the boy was still too young and inexperienced. The man could have assigned him some less dangerous mission. However, the man added words that, For some reason, he was sure that the boy had a special power that would help him survive the battle with the orcs. The head of the guild told the boy not to do anything stupid, and then he put his hand on Tatsuya's shoulder. Suzu watched in silence. The man turned to the adventurer again, saying that there was no time. He said there were carts waiting for them at the north gate. He told everyone who was ready to fight to go there. Tatsuya and Suzu set off. The boy thought that after this, yesterday's dinner with fried chicken seemed like a wonderful dream. Tatsuya noticed that the girl was silent. He asked what was wrong with her. The boy said the words that she knows that he is always on the lookout. He asked the girl what happened. He suggested that maybe she wanted a cookie. Suzu was silent. And then suddenly, she began to approach the boy, who was thinking that the girl was probably already hungry. Suddenly, Suzu approached Tatsuya, who was very surprised and quickly hugged him. The boy stood in a stupor.